Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the public hearing. So this is a special business meeting of the District of Squamish, Tuesday, March 10th. Hatsqualowin, Quistoluktumuk, Las Cohomish, Oweomayo. We are meeting tonight on the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. Motion to adopt the agenda, moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Stoner. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have one timed item this evening. This is the public hearing for District of Squamish Zoning Bylaw number 2200, 2011, Amendment Bylaw, Squamish Canyon Project number 2685, 2018. After the public hearing, Council can take the opportunity to consider third reading or may wish to defer third reading to contemplate the feedback that we received this evening. So we'll make that decision once we've closed the public hearing. I have an opening statement that I have to read to everyone, and then we will get started. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the Local Government Act requirements to allow the public to present and provide submissions to Council respecting the proposed District of Squamish Zoning Bylaw number 2200, 2011, Amendment Bylaw number 2685, 2018. Everyone present will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or provide a written submission. We want to ensure that no one is discouraged or prevented from making their views known, whether speaking in favor or against the proposed zoning amendment. Please ensure that your remarks are relevant to the matters contained in the proposed bylaw. Please note that this public hearing is being recorded and web streamed live, and the recording will be posted to the district website. Media are present this evening, and the public should feel free to advise the media if they don't want their picture taken. Members of council may ask clarifying questions following presentations, but it's important for you to know that council is here to listen this evening and will not debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with the public or each other during the public hearing. Up to and as part of this hearing, the public has had the opportunity to make submissions to council. If any submissions were received, they are available for review and comment and have been included as part of staff's report. Any submissions received after the agenda was published have been copied and provided to council on blue paper, which we have here at the desk, and are available to the public. Any submissions made during the hearing can be reviewed during the hearing by asking Legislative Services staff. You want to just put your hands up, Leg Services, so people know who you are? And they're at the desk too. We are trying to make this hearing a safe space for everyone to voice their opinion without interference from others. Therefore, I ask that members of the public maintain order and quiet during the hearing. Please do not applaud or interrupt any speech or action of members of council or any other person addressing council. I'll now ask the Planning Department to outline what the bylaw is proposing.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and members of the public. My name is Carrie Hamilton, and I'm a planner with the Community Planning and Infrastructure Department. Presenting to you today Bylaw Amendment number 2685, 2018 for the Squamish Canyon Project for public hearing and consideration of third reading. So this project has been presented twice to Council, first at a committee of the whole and again for first and second reading. For the benefit of the public, today's presentation will cover all the information presented to Council at previous meetings and will include some updated and new information highlighted in red in the following sections. With me today, I have my colleague Devin Kianaga from Engineering, who has been the engineering lead for his department on this file. Tonight's staff presentation will provide an overview of relevant zoning and land ownership for the area, provide a summary of the proposed project and its sustainability objectives, highlight important topics and reports related to engineering and environment, which now include a final traffic impact assessment report, and provide a brief overview of how the project is meeting council priorities and OCP policy. To summarize the public engagement to date and next steps for the project. So this slide briefly details the history of the project. Crown Land authorizations first referred the Squamish Canyon Project, then named Mamquem Canyon Eco Tour, to the district in 2015. The district provided a response outlining 2016 comments and policies, and the Squamish Canyon Project received a provincial license in 2017. The license was amended 3 times over the course of 2017 and 2018, including license holder name changes, term changes, included an updated management plan. The woodlot license, which previously covered the project area, was amended in 2018 to officially remove 7.9 hectares of logging rights for the protection and purpose of this provincial licensed area. An application to the district for a temporary use permit was made in 2018 and was later reapplied under a rezoning application in 2019. Bylaw Amendment 2685, 2018 is proposing to rezone roughly 10.5 hectares of land consistent with the provincial license agreement area and 0.9 hectares of land for the purpose of parking. The bylaw also amends Bylaw 2200, 2011 to include a new commercial recreation ecotourism use. Bylaw Amendment 2685, 2018 is proposing to rezone land currently zoned RS1 and groundwater protection P6. The provincial license area is found just south of CD 13 Atlantic Power Hydroelectric Power Generation Facility and the now Lafarge-owned land zoned resource. The project area is bounded by RS1 zone land owned by the Squamish Nation to the south and west, and uncoded Crown land to the southeast. The P6 zone groundwater protection was created recently in 2018 to protect the district's Powerhouse Springs water supply area. The zone boundary was roughly drafted in line with the geotechnical and hydrological consultants report and recommended protection area, which is the image you see on this screen. As you can see on this map, the Squamish Canyon Project only borders the protection zone in this map. However, the zoning mapping, when it was created, was created a bit more of a buffer and therefore officially falls within this Crown license area. Regardless, the report, as well as the P6 zone, supports logging, trails, and education and interpretive signage, which, as you can see from the map, the area already supports several trail networks. According to the findings of this report, an amendment of this P6 zone for Squamish Canyon uses would have no impact on the district's Powerhouse Spring water supply. So the district can designate both zoning and land uses for properties. Zoning is a tool to specifically regulate uses and density on a land, where land use is policy that is used to direct future growth. This slide zooms out from the Squamish Canyon Project, seen in the white dashed lines, to look at the surrounding land uses around the project. As you can see, the majority of this area falls under resources and recreation land use, which can be seen in the brown area. This land use supports a wide array of Squamish Nation uses, industrial uses, and public and commercial recreation uses. The land use supports the proposed CD96 uses for commercial recreation ecotourism. Although you can see this project is outside the growth boundary, the district's OCP growth management policy does support recreation tourism activities outside this growth boundary. So land to the southwest in bright yellow is residential neighborhood land use. This area is within the district growth boundary and could experience residential growth in the near future, as indicated by the purple star. The land north and far west of the property has a land use designation of future residential neighborhood, indicated by the strip lines. This future residential neighborhood growth would be conditional on a growth boundary extension and would require a sub-area plan, as most of the area is currently not zoned for residential use. But that said, because the land use is supportive of this, it could potentially see future residential growth in the far future. Another growth factor to consider is the presence of Squamish Nation within the vicinity of the project, indicated by the red polygons. As this area is zoned RS1, Squamish Nation could, should they choose, develop this land for residential purposes. It's important to note that should this bylaw amendment not proceed, the Squamish Canyon Project land is also mostly zoned RS1 and could also experience future residential growth if and when the growth boundary allows for it. So moving on to the project proposal, the first phase of the Squamish Canyon Project includes roughly 800 meters of boardwalk elevated off the forest floor and roughly 200 meters of canyon walkway. The second phase of the project, marked by the dashed lines on the southeast corner, would include the addition of 2 bridges over the canyon and more elevated boardwalks with lookout platforms on the other side of the canyon. This is the area that falls within the P6 zone. The Canyon Boardwalk attraction includes an entrance area that includes a ticket booth, public washrooms, and a concession stand. The whole area will be elevated boardwalk and decking and offers covered areas as well as seating options. This area will be open to the public for other recreational users during hours of operation before entering the turn cycle and ticketing area of the boardwalks. The trail network ends at an event space and children's natural play area, also located on elevated platforms and weather protected by sails. This area will consist of a playground, washrooms, cafe, concession stand, small merchandise area, and a small stage. The area can be used and accessed separate from the boardwalk attraction and offer further community gathering opportunities. As an update for the public, the density for these two areas, along with some flexibility for growth, was initially expected to be less than 2,000 meters squared at first and second reading. Council expressed concern for this density number, and staff's review with the applicant determined that the area on the site plans were actually calculating both the enclosed space, which is what density is, as well as the boardwalk and seating open space. So the density number has been revised to 500 meters squared to account for only the proposed enclosed space, with some future growth flexibility. This growth is envisioned through a second story rather than an increased footprint. As this amendment refers to density, this was given second reading on February 25th. An updated site plan at public hearing has been added as attachment A to reflect these changes. So at first and second reading, the use of amplified sound in the amphitheater area was brought up by council as a potential concern for the existing residential neighborhoods in the vicinity of the project. As the district only regulates sound by time of day, and banning amplified sound outright will restrict the intended use and functionality of this area, the applicant hired BKL to conduct a sound study to understand the estimated sound travel and sound impact to adjacent residential uses. The report uses a standard 85 decibels as at the amphitheater location, which is considered an event that generates low levels of noise such as speech, wedding ceremonies, dog shows, recorded music performance, jazz, blues, or symphony concerts. A rock concert, which is not the intention of this area, was excluded as it ranges from 95 to 100 decibels. It's a very small image, but basically in the middle is the 85 decibels, and the sound travels out through these colors. The report references the World Health Organization guidelines for community noise, which states that the daytime outdoor sound pressure level should not exceed 50 decibels, which is the yellow line that you see here. And this is in order to protect the majority of people from being seriously annoyed during the daytime. As you can see from this map, the yellow lines stay mostly within the property lines, with the exception of higher elevation areas as sound travels upwards. When zooming out to take into account existing residential neighborhoods, the sound level that would reach Valley Cliff residents would be below 25 decibels, which is equivalent to a quiet rural residence and/or a whisper. The sound level that would reach the Some Kintyre Drive residents in Garibaldi Highlands would be 35 decibels, and Quest University residents 39 decibels, both shown by the dark green lines, and would be equivalent to a babbling brook or a library space. The report also speaks to Valley Cliff Cherry Drive residents currently experiencing a background sound level average of 40 to 45 decibels due to the traffic in the area, the power plant activity, and the Mamquam and Squamish River flow. Therefore, the sound level that would reach adjacent residential communities during the daytime would be below the existing background noise and far lower than the recommended maximums that the HOOD guidelines have. The Squamish Canyon Project amphitheater is therefore not expected to be heard by or disrupt existing residents in the vicinity of the project. So in order to regulate this, staff are proposing to add a decibel limit to the management plan in order to guide and prevent the use of the amphitheater space to exceed 85 decibels, and to provide a sound limit to existing and future residential developments to not exceed 50 decibels. This means if future neighborhoods development occurs in and around the canyon area, sound levels may need to be monitored and adjusted. The management plan will also state that a sound system installation report be required at the time of building permit to ensure that the sound system installed will focus sound energy only to the audience with steerable line arrays, which is a method known to reduce sound travel. Although operation of the Squamish Canyon will not exceed dusk, The district noise bylaw will also restrict event sound past 10 p.m. in case dusk is later in the summer months. So CD 96 will secure a minimum of 100 parking stalls for phase 1 operations with enough CD's 96 zone land remaining to expand the parking lot if needed. So the parking lot will offer a one-way drive aisle with a few entrances and exits along Powerhouse Springs Road. The parking area is outside of the provincial license agreement area and is underneath existing power lines owned by Atlantic Power. Atlantic Power has a lease with the province to use this area for hydro lines, and Squamish Canyon have both an agreed right-of-way agreement with Atlantic Power and a sublease agreement with the province for the use of this area as parking. The parking lot includes a 1.5 meter pathway to the entrance and picnic areas where possible. At first and second reading, Council asked staff what would become of the existing public parking lot, and staff would like to clarify that the existing parking lot will be maintained for public use where safe and possible, and additional parking created by the Squamish Canyon Project will be open to the public use. Public use of the parking lot will be secured in the provincial agreement. So these parking areas will be reviewed in much more detail at the time of development permit. So Select Contracts prepared a visitation study for the project. The report found that an average party size is expected to be 3.3 people, guest duration in the experience, an average of 2 hours. The daily average total visits is expected to be 374 visitors per day, which is expected to result in an average of 128 vehicles per day. The averages are divided from an expected 75 peak days a year, which, if weekends and weather are taken into account, 17 of those days are expected to see peak visitation. The total annual visitors expected in year 3 is 136,000. So the graph on this slide shows initial visitation rates per hour on an average day, while the graph on the right shows it at peak day. These averages and peaks fluctuate per month. Average and peak guests are represented in navy blue, while cars per hour are represented in gray, and cars parked in the parking lot represented in light blue and dark blue. So to simplify what the graphs represent, the tables below show the maximums expected for each category, with maximum cars parked at initial year peak time being roughly 70 cars, and the average car per hour driving up the Mamquam FSR road being roughly 20 cars per hour. Graphs were also prepared to show people, cars, and cars parked per hour at full build-out. Staff have prepared this graph to show the expected differences between maximum year 1 visitation and full build-out maximum visitation per hour, with dark colors showing peak days, while the lighter colors show an average day. As a comparable to the last slide, the maximum cars parked at peak time and at full build-out is expected to be roughly 110, where on average the cars per hour will increase to about 36 per hour. So the Canyon Project 2018 Management Plan, which is included in Schedule B, highlights a number of sustainability goals for the project, some of which are still feasible and others to be revised and amended in an updated management plan, which will be required for adoption. So for energy, the applicant intends to explore micro-hydropower as a future renewable energy source. In the meantime, the site will be connected to hydro with infrastructure capacity to accommodate electrical vehicle and electrical bike charging stations. Services, a connection to municipal water is feasible for this project and is planned for, helping to reduce bottled water waste, and rainwater will be captured and stored for irrigation and vegetation needs. Environment. Goals such as elevated boardwalks are an additional expense to the project. However, they also help to preserve and protect natural drainage in the area and small mammal crossings. Boardwalk railings are also proposed to be installed to keep visitors on the designated trails. The project, as it develops, intends to be carbon neutral and achieve low to zero waste and low to zero emissions, working towards zero waste and negative emissions. To explore the concept of carbon neutrality and greenhouse gases, the applicant has added a GHG sequestrian section to Schedule G of this report. The review outlines the GHG benefits to keeping the forest in place. The forest is estimated to be storing 2,584 metric tons of CO2 and sequestered 200 to 560 metric tons of CO2 since the applicant removed the logging rights 4 years ago. So site access. Although the initial predominant mode of travel to access the site will be by vehicle, the project's future direction includes electrical vehicle charging stalls, tour bus transportation, road upgrades to create a designated bike walking area along the Powerhouse Spring Road from the Valley Cliff community. And capacity plans are also proposed. So should the canyon activity or parking reach capacity, it will be communicated to the public at the Highway 99 intersection turnoff via a sign or a flag person at the entrance to Mamquem FSR Road. This is to avoid unnecessary travel up the road. So as a consideration for third reading, an amendment to the bylaw is being proposed in order to secure a number of these objectives by phase 2. They include requiring 15% of the parking stalls be EV charging stalls, and that 1.4 meters of trail be built, and that the access road is paved prior to phase 2 building permit. So a number of walking and biking trails are accessed via the existing service road, which is indicated by the blue line here on the slide, and Mamquem River Access Road, which is the yellow line. So access to mountain biking trails via the service road will not be impacted by this project. Similarly, access via the Mamquem River Access Road will also not be affected. The provincial license agreement area includes 2 important kayak access points to the Mamquem River, both highlighted in red dashed lines. One is near the bridge and the other directly crosses the proposed Squamish Canyon Boardwalk network. A petition to preserve these accesses were initiated by BC Whitewater Society and sent to staff following the application's development showcase release. Staff have hosted several meetings and discussions between the applicant and the Mamquem River Access Society and BC Whitewater Society to address and discuss kayak access preservation. Both accesses will remain public and be preserved as part of a memorandum of understanding between the applicant and MRAS and will be a condition of rezoning adoption. MRAS and BC Whitewater are also seeking a provincial license to preserve these access points in perpetuity. So 2 public walking trails begin within the parcel license for Squamish Canyon and continue into the private land north of the site. A number of these trails are within the 30-meter riparian area and branch off main trails as roughly illustrated by the red line, which is the same trail used for the kayak access. The public trail network with the property parcel will maintain the 1 public access. Other trails within the parcel will be restored to their natural habitat. So the parcel can be accessed from Highway 99 through Mamquem River Forest Service Road, so as seen in red on the aerial image, and Powerhouse Springs Road in green. Control and oversight of the Mamquem FSR falls under the Ministry of Forests, Lands, Natural Resources Operations, and Rural Development. Commercial users of the road are required to obtain road use permits from the ministry and enter into road maintenance agreements. The primary user of the road is responsible to enter into maintenance agreements with other users based on usage, all of which is overseen and managed by the ministry. Currently, maintenance of the road includes occasional grading by industrial users and minimal applications of dust suppression by the district. The yellow dashed lines indicates where the district's budget for and applies dust suppression, and this is done once a year. The yellow circles indicate where we have recorded 2019 dust complaints. As road users, the applicant will be upgrading the entire access road surface by stripping, filling, and regrading. There will be an initial application of dust suppression for the entire access road with a budget for multiple areas or full reapplications throughout the year. They will also be improving sightlines through thinning of roadside vegetation in key areas. Once the Canyon Project is proven to be viable, and before they move to phase 2, they will be required to pave these sections of Mamquem FSR and Powerhouse Springs Road. These road upgrades items will be captured under a combination of the provincial road permit and provincial management plan amendment, while the paving is proposed to be secured as part of the zone itself. So in addition to surface treatments, the applicant is also proposing safety signage along the road and in key sections of the road primarily where pedestrian trails intersect the road. Signage includes reduced speed limits from 80 kilometers to 50 kilometers, better inform users of the mixed use of the road, signage that signalize pedestrian crossings, and signage for the narrow bridge, and to direct users to the location of Squamish Canyon. Bunton Associates were hired to do a traffic impact assessment. Short form, we're going to call this TIA. And this is to determine if upgrades are required to the intersection of Mamquam FSR and Highway 99, the primary access to the Squamish Canyon Project. The report makes assumptions on the added numbers of vehicle trips based on vehicle and parking data collected in the peak season in 2017. And this was done for the Squamish Gondola, the Chief, and the Shannon Falls. Since first and second reading, the traffic impact assessment was updated by Bunton Associates. Two key changes include updated traffic model based on a 2% growth rate. The original report was based on a 2.3% growth rate, and it was agreed upon with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure to reduce this growth rate to 2%. The traffic model was also updated based on diverting gondola U-turn traffic away from the intersection. To address safety concerns around the intersection, Bunt recommends the following measures. Provide U-turn signage from the Sea to Sky gondola, directing southbound traffic to the Chief parking lot. Installing a flashing digital speed reader sign on the northbound approach of the highway, which is a new mitigation measure proposed in this TIA. Raise channelized islands to better delineate traffic flow for users of both the highway and the FSR, and this can be seen in red. Marked crossing for pedestrians and cyclists in purple. A painted northbound right turn arrow, which is highlighted, the location of that is highlighted in blue. Repainted lane lines for traffic coming from the FSR to help ensure vehicles turning right can fit around vehicles queued to turn left onto the highway, and this is in green. So note, Bunt is no longer recommending a slip lane for traffic turning right off the FSR onto the highway. They feel that redirecting U-turns away from this intersection and better compliance with the flashing speed reader eliminate the need for a slip lane. Bunt also recommends directing traffic to turn north and then turn around via Valley Drive when there's our long vehicle queues. A review of the Valley Drive intersection indicates negligible impact to that intersection. The gondola has indicated it supports directing southbound vehicles to the Chief parking lot to complete U-turns and review of diverting U-turns to the Chief parking lot intersection, so shows negligible impact due to the dedicated merge lane that's at that location on the highway. So it's important to note here that any design modifications require approval by MOTI, the ministry, and at this time MOTI has provided an initial verbal review of the proposal, and staff's recommendation is to make MOTI approval a condition of adoption. So in summary, current performance of this intersection when the highway is at its busiest does not meet desired levels of service, though it does function. The majority of the time, the intersection actually performs at what is a considerable and reasonable level. Modeling the intersection shows us that provided U-turns, the additional traffic due to the Canyon Project would have minimal impact to the performance of this intersection. The only exception to this are the busiest times of year when it's projected in 2030. It should be noted that this is only if the highway grows at the projected 2% growth rate, which is something that Bunt, the professional, argues is not realistic given the highway's current capacity. So regarding safety, the increase in traffic is calculated to increase the potential for crashes by up to 18%. However, the safety mitigation measures proposed is calculating to decrease the potential for crashes by 43%. So in other words, the benefits of the proposed mitigation measures outweigh the consequences of adding more traffic. Finally, none of the proposed mitigation measures interfere with Site B, which allows for future upgrades. Staff's opinion is that the applicant's proposed mitigation measures are appropriate. So the applicant is planning to move the yellow access gate on Power Springs Road down the road approximately 50 meters, will be out of sight and will allow for easier opening and closing by vehicle operators. This placement was decided in collaboration with Atlantic Power and our Public Works Department supports this proposed location and new chain as it will increase protection of our water well. The gate will typically be left open during business hours and will be closed and locked after hours. There will be an unlocked chain across the road near the current gate's location to deter the public from accessing this area. Authorized users will be able to access the area, and I will add that bikers and trail bikers and recreationists can also pass through this area without having to unclip the chain. Authorized users will be able to access the area for vehicles by unclipping the chain and reattaching it upon entry. Under normal conditions, responsibility to operate the chain will be on the vehicle operators. In an emergency, the Canyon Emergency Response Plan will include parameters for operating the chain and gate as required to provide clear and easy access and egress to ensure no delays to emergency vehicles. The Emergency Response Plan will be captured as part of the provincial agreement. So in response to Council's questions regarding emergency services, the applicant has provided a subsequent document to outline some of their preliminary emergency management plan objectives, and this can be found in Schedule G. As a community amenity, the applicant is also committing to installing a permanent rescue access to Memquin Falls. The rescue access point is located on Atlantic Power property and is supported by Atlantic Power. So as the district does not own this road and the property is on Crown land, typical rezoning legal tools like land development agreements cannot be secured. Therefore, staff are suggesting that a number of servicing agreement related conditions are completed by adoption and then written and amended into the provincial license. You can find a complete table in Appendix A to this report. In brief summary, water connection details will be secured by adoption. We will require Vancouver Coastal Health approval of the septic system prior to adoption. Stormwater management falls under Development Permit Area 1 and can be secured at development permit. Hydro legal agreements for usage should be drafted and signed prior to adoption, and flood management protocols to be updated and secured in the provincial license prior to adoption, along with the condition to indemnify the district should flood damage occur. In the emergency service plan, which includes a fire hydrant and fire truck access and its turning radiuses, will need to be amended and secured in the provincial license prior to adoption. So in summary, the district will be using adoption as a way to secure most of these engineering works. Moving on to environment. A bioinventory report was produced by Cascade Environmental Resource Group. The report notes that removal of logging rights from the land as an ecological benefit and documents the following valuable environmental resources with 22 mitigation measures to protect these resources. These benefits include the Memquin River the Memquin River as fish bearing, a wetland, riparian forests, including mature forest and wildlife trees, wildlife movement corridors, sensitive ecosystems. So the report also speaks to streamside protection and enhancement areas, as the project will fall under Development Permit Area 1. All buildings are confirmed outside of the SPIA, and all trails within the SPIA will require federal and provincial approvals, and this will happen prior to Development Permit Area 1 issuance. A wildlife management plan was also prepared. It recommends no dogs and strict construction and operation protocols to avoid wildlife attractants, and how to address wildlife when it is encountered in the area. The report speaks to the area being supportable habitat for black-tailed deer, black bears, coyotes, and rare cougars, and confirms that the proposed design measures will allow for minimal disruption to small mammal travel. And it will allow for large mammal travel through the area during temporal closure times, which means during dusk till dawn. Nighttime activity is not proposed at this time and can be secured in the Development Permit Area 1 permit. So OCP policy that supports the project or guides rezoning requirements are summarized as follows on the slide. They include recreation tourism supported outside of the growth boundary, environmental policy and review practices, protect wildlife and minimize wildlife conflicts, preserve, connect, and enhance access to natural areas, open space, and outdoor recreation, expand and enhance access to recreation amenities, support activities and development in alignment with our brand. This development is aligned with 3 council strategic priorities. First, the plan and environment through more preservation of environmental habitat than the RS1 zoning could have had. The economy and local jobs. Tourism is a core economic sector for the region and plays a vital role in district's economic vitality. Neighborhood connectivity and public spaces, as the covered play area and stage offers an inviting space to support community connectedness and social gatherings. The application received over 50 comments during the development showcase phase, many of which were regarding the Mamquem kayak access concerns. The applicant held a public information meeting on October 22nd, 2019. All 50 email inquiries were informed of the PIM date and location via email by staff 10 days prior to the event. Over 30 people were in attendance and 12 comments were collected. More comments were received at first and second reading on January 7th, 2020, and all comments to date were notified via email of the March 10th public hearing date on February 26, 2020. So all legislative public hearing notification procedures were followed for this project and this public hearing. 4 new comments have been submitted since first and second reading, and they were part of your package found in Schedule F to this report. And a number of other comments were received in the last couple of days, which are now part of your package in blue. So for the benefit of the public, this project was first presented to council at a community hall meeting on November 26, 2019, and then again for first and second reading on January 7, 2020. Today is the public hearing, followed by third reading. Next steps for this project, should third reading be given, would be adoption, where a number of conditions and assurances will be required before proceeding. As previously mentioned, as no land development agreement can be secured on Crown land, adoption will be then time to ensure details and legal agreements are secured. If conditions are met and council moves adoption, the file will proceed to Development Permit Area 1, which is an environmental review, and Development Permit Area 3, which is a form and character review. Development permit will also trigger the need for provincial and federal environmental permits. From there, site alteration permits and building permits will also be required. I am done. So council recommendations is that the District of Squamish Zoning Bylaw 2200 2011 Amendment Bylaw be amended by inserting the following section into the bylaw. These are basically the 3 conditions that are going to be required for phase 2. And following that, the District of Squamish zoning bylaw will be given third reading as amended, and these are a number of the conditions for adoption. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you. Well, you can have the applause, Ms. Hamilton, but no one else is allowed to get any applause.
Sorry.
Okay. So I'll now ask the applicant or their representative to comment on the proposed rezoning if they would like to, after which anyone else will be given the opportunity to speak or make their submission. I do have a list of names here, and I will call those individuals to the podium first. After these speakers, I will call for any other interested parties to speak, and then you simply need to raise your hand and wait to be recognized. For all speakers, please approach the podium. Don't touch the microphone if you don't have to. And start your remarks by clearly stating your name and address. Please note that speakers will be given up to 5 minutes to address council in order that everyone has an opportunity to speak this evening. If you've already spoken and then wish to speak again to provide more or new comments, please let us know. And once everyone has had a chance to speak, you'll be offered a second turn. So, would the applicant like to speak, or representative of the applicant?
Here, go for it. Hi, well, thanks everyone for coming. It's been a long road, and you're all here because of me. So, I either apologize or thank you for coming. This is all very, it's been a bureaucratic process, and we've had it laid out in a systematic way, and I'm going to speak a little bit from the heart for a minute as to...
And Mr. Sherry, I need you to address council.
Sorry. Okay.
And did you start with your name and address?
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay. Robin Sherry, 40275 Air Drive, Squamish, BC.
Thank you.
Okay. So as I said, council, I'd like to address a little more from the heart, and then quickly speak to our amenities that we're contributing to the community, which I know was in the paperwork, but I think should be readdressed. So, hello, my name is Robin Sherry, the creator of the Squamish Canyon. I've lived in this town for over 11 years. I'm a ski guide, a safety consultant, a community member that cares about our town and its members. I've been a volunteer with the Squamish Search and Rescue for over 8 years, and I was a volunteer with the firefighter department of Squamish Fire for 4 years. I've literally risked my life for this town and given countless hours of time. So while I will state and ask one thing of everybody, that my integrity and the integrity of this project are sound and not come into question. It's not easy to listen to your project that is created through passion, your heart, and your life be broken down on a sterile level, but much appreciation to all the work that's gone into presenting it and working to get through that. Many years of work have been put into this, research, studied, and evaluated on how to make a good business that is good for the environment, good for our employees, can make a difference in lives and community well beyond my life and yours. If you don't like this project, then you are unaware of what we are solving and what is happening around you. And I have done a poor job of getting that across, and for that I apologize. But if you pose this because you feel that you should be the last, and only you should be the one to enjoy the spot, for the short period of time it will have existed without this initiative, I will not stand by that. If you would like it to be logged, I will not stand by that. If you would like it to be housed, I will not stand by that. If you would like it to become a gong show overrun and trampled and a rescue nightmare, I will not stand by that. If you would like to see more garbage and human waste, road camping, near misses, forest fires, I will not stand by that. If you'd like to see this forest grow strong and tall, I will be committed. If you want a place to gather, learn, and play in the rain and shine, a safe, beautiful place to bring your family, your visitors, a place where people will learn and connect with nature, our history and culture, I will be committed. If you want a business in town that understands our climate emergency, the sustainability needed, and the steps for that, I will be committed. A place that can be part of solutions to current problems in the area, I will be committed. Make no mistake, this area will be developed or logged and discovered one way or another, but a business that cares and protects, improves, and will have the ability to try and expand more protection and green space, these do not come along very often. When a good business is created that cares about the environment, and they know their part in that, when they create a good community and economic decisions and realize that the environment, community employees can't be sacrificed because of the latter, you're putting good people with good footholds in our community to be part of positive, sustainable, ethical decisions for growth. I've spent 6 years working on and developing a legacy project for this community that forever will be protected. I will educate and excite and connect our visitors in a safe atmosphere. It will offer a place for all season for our community and will upon its success be able to give back. It will be a leader in sustainability and show our visitors that they can do this as well. It will give a place for local long-term jobs, employees that can bike to work and be proud and share their Squamish with others in a low-pack safe manner. This is not a condo development, this is not a major tourist attraction, this is a legacy for our town. A chance to show a different use of our forests, an ability to show industry, recreation, education, environmental stewardship, employment are all able to coexist and thrive. It is a place that will be many things, and all of those things will take time. Please be patient while I create the place to be admired, loved, and shared forever. Do I have time?
You have another minute if you want
All
to
right.
use it.
Squamish Canyon Community Amenity Contributions. Preservation of second growth rainforests, endangered species or blue list species, and habitat protection and GHG sequestration. Phase 1 upgrades to Mamquam Forest Service Road of $150,000 to eliminate dust, increase road surface quality, increase safety and air quality with an ongoing budget for maintenance. Agreements with the province to decrease the speed from 80 kilometers to 50 kilometers an hour. Living wages for employees with increasing benefits, installation of permanent rescue system for the Mamquam Falls, and trained rescue staff on site. Fire hydrant and water access on site for wildland interface fire suppression with trained staff on site. Public washrooms for all our recreational users in the area. Staff in the area to monitor illegal camping and dumping in the area.
15 seconds.
Safe and educational low-impact experience for our visitors to Squamish. More gathering green space for our community. And one I want to touch base on, the Squamish Canyon Project will be able to enhance and contribute to the preservation, protection, and accessibility to the Mamquam River well into the future. Collaborating and supporting local groups that share this vision will be part of our direction and goals. Squamish Canyon is dedicating 1% of our annual profit to these organizations and partnering up with these great projects.
Thank you, Mr. Sherry.
Okay.
No applause, please. No applause. It's really important that we just are silent so that people, whether they're for or against this project, feel like they can speak freely. It's really important that we create that space for people here. It's not easy to get up and speak in public, so I know there's lots of different feelings in the room, so we'll just contemplate people's words in silence. Thank you. So next up, I have John Harvey, please.
Hello, my name is John Harvey. I live at 2541 Lamond Way in the Garibaldi Highlands. I represent the Mamquam River Access Society, the nearest neighbor to this proposal. The Mamquam River Access Society mandate and constitution is free public access to the river for recreation and also to build and operate a nonprofit campground. But really its origins were free public access to the river for recreation. And that's the whole river. It's from the confluence with the Squamish River right up to the headwaters of the river. Really, the Mamquam River Access Society envisions a linear park on either side of the Mamquam River forever. Though the Squamish Canyon Project on the Mamquam River is a commercial enterprise, we see it as supportive of getting people outside, safely experiencing nature from inside of a glorious river canyon. The project will provide access, albeit paid access, to an area that is otherwise inaccessible. His proposal complements the Sea to Sky gondola type tourist, which certainly adds value to our tourism industry. The project will secure the area from industrial use or otherwise from some inevitable housing development. Basically, he's ultimately saving it from being lost to something else. The fact that the proponent's paid walkway is above our trail, we built a trail, Mamquam River Access Society volunteers built the trail and the viewing platform right beside the canyon many, many years ago. And his paid walkway will be right above our trail. So that's a bit odd, for sure, but I see it as workable. It'll work, you know? It's a bit odd, though, that I'm going to be on this trail with a kayak or a fishing pole or just walking with my dog, and there's people above me paying big dollars. Sort of funny, but it can work. And we as a nonprofit, his nearest neighbor, for this one small area, see it's a benefit to our town. And we as a nonprofit certainly aren't going to play NIMBY. Yeah, so it is better from our perspective if the people are bused there, and that may happen in the future, of course, as it becomes more popular. It certainly provides access to what is an unbelievably beautiful canyon eroded out of the surrounding granite. We support it. The proponent is prepared to mitigate the dust issue for Valley Cliff and the highways access, et cetera, et cetera. Mamquam River Access Society has also applied for a Flynn Row Section 56 to secure our trail in perpetuity and guarantee continued free access for paddling the river and the falls. So the paddlers, there's a number of paddlers that go over those waterfalls. Probably a couple hundred humans have done it. And they will continue to want to do that in the future. They have their access, and if they want to go upriver a little bit around the property, they even have access to paddle the river right underneath of the paid clients. And that'll probably be a benefit for the paid client, seeing crazy kayakers going over waterfalls. So, yeah, we support it. Thank you.
Thanks, Harvey. Next up, Philippa Clark, please. Just your name and address before you start.
My name is Philippa Clark. I live in Balsam Place in Ravens Plateau, Squamish. So I'm writing this letter and addressing council as a very concerned resident of Ravens Plateau in Valleycliff, and to express my objection to the Squamish Canyon Project and associated access road. I moved to Squamish 3 years ago with my young family to get away from the city and immerse ourselves in the truly unique and beautiful lands of Squamish. This proposal, if successful, will quickly erode the relatively untouched lands surrounding the Mount Crum River, which will have an everlasting detrimental impact on not only the environment but also the families that have chosen to call this place home. The expectation that the introduction of such a development will have a positive impact to the local community, I believe, is short-sighted and naive. I'm sceptical of the intentions of Robin Sherry, as this appears to be a very personal project into which he has invested considerable personal time and money. In one of his YouTube videos, he states that if he knew how much time, bureaucracy, and money it would have taken, he may have never started the project. This is alarming to me as a resident of the area into which he is trying to develop. And at what point does he decide enough is enough and backs out when all the money runs out? The public and private messages that I've also received in the last 24 hours demonstrate his true colours and lack of professionalism as a businessman. I have recorded screenshots to share with council if needed. I have to ask the question why there's been so little engagement with the local community. If he was truly invested, then surely we should have been heard from him over the past 6 years to truly share his plans, proposals, and to try and get the community on board and hear our concerns. My concerns are really as follows. As a resident whose home backs directly onto the FSR, my family and I are already disturbed by the logging trucks that trundle down the FSR and those that use it for recreational purposes. If this project gets approved, the number of cars, tourist coaches, and other vehicles using it will exponentially increase. The road was not designed for the expected volume of traffic, and with a single-lane bridge over the fast-flowing Mount Crum River, this will create a focused danger point for accidents. The bridge would likely need to be totally redesigned and made safe for large traffic volumes, as currently it has very low sides, over which a vehicle could easily roll if accident circumstances aligned. Has this been considered as part of the report? The project is proposing the provision of parking for 100 cars with the future opportunity to increase to 125. If over 100 cars travel all the way down the FSR to the site and find they're unable to park, what is the situation that unfolds? Will they be turned away and told to return at a later time or date? Or will they park on the FSR and gradually block any safe access? Now, I do know that Robin did acknowledge that there would be a flagged person, but I'm sceptical that this would work and it would create a backlog of cars at the entrance as people getting turned away. How would that be managed? Has there been any consideration for monitoring those that enter the FSR? How would the logging of trucks and emergency vehicles also safely access the site and beyond? Have alternative sites been considered for such a project, and what other access options were a part of the assessment, and what criteria were used to make this decision? The traffic assessment was only done on the main intersection and not the FSR. Who is funding all the proposed mitigation measures that he called out in his proposals? According to the ESA mapping, the area in question is rated as high. Has there been adequate assessment to fully understand the environmental impacts of the project from the highway access point south of Squamish up the full length of the Mount Crum FSR to the site itself, not just in the immediate vicinity of the canyon site? The FSR navigates through beautiful and rich land, and the area directly parallel to the road will rapidly decline as usage increases. This will also result in an inevitable impact to local wildlife and protected species in the area. According to the Canadian Wildlife Service, the FSR runs along an area of critical habitat, and this was not considered as part of the report, which states, the subject area can be located by accessing Powerhouse Springs Road off the Mount Crum FSR within the district of Squamish. The purpose of this bioinventory assessment is to identify environmentally valuable resources on or near, i.e. within 100 metres only of the site, and if present, to determine the potential impacts as a result of the proposed development. This does not include the area of the FSR. Dust pollution. With the increased road usage will come the inevitable increase in dust. This FSR is currently a dirt road, and the local Ravens Plateau residents already suffer with excessive dust in our homes, and this will only get worse. There is supposed to be an annual treatment on the roads to minimise the dust, and although there is a promise of additional treatments, I'm not having faith that this will materialise and will be left living in a cloud of dust. Today we have to reach out and continually remind the district to treat the road. If paving is not taking place until phase 2, this is still yet to be planned, so we can just sit and wait until this paving takes place. Light pollution. In order to make the canyon site safe and road safety, any lighting will add any increased light pollution to the local area. Noise pollution. As previously documented, we are already subject to the noise created by current usage. We hear it in our beds at night as the trucks trundle up and down the road. Any further volume on the road will only exacerbate the issue. The local neighbourhood is not aware of a noise assessment that has taken place to understand the impacts of this type of pollution. The sound assessment, as mentioned in the survey, was done only on amplified sound and not on vehicles and additional traffic. The increased risk of forest fires. The addition of people into any environment in this manner will always increase the risk of forest fires.
Time, Ms. Clark. So if you'd like to come back, you can come back for another
If
5
I could,
minutes.
that would be appreciated.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, please. I don't want to keep asking. Please, no applause. This is very important to the public hearing process. Next up, Ross Dolan, please.
Hello, Council. My name is Ross Dolan, and I live at 2014 Balsam Way in Squamish. I didn't prepare anything, but I thought they gave me the opportunity to speak, so I thought I would. This won't take 5 minutes. You don't need to worry about that. I come from an environmental science background. I'm a wildlife officer with Environment Canada, and I've been with the public service for about 20 years. One thing I can tell you, through my career is that animal-human conflict is an issue that most of us only see in the news. And fortunately, most of us don't have a job like mine where you see it firsthand. Habitat degradation and habitat destruction is an issue that primarily happens in the backwoods, in sites that aren't publicly accessible or publicly viewable. The critical habitat that was spoken about previously, that is specific to a shorebird called the marbled murrelet. Canada Wildlife Service went through the process of assessing critical habitat for this bird and determined that it does have critical habitat, which means areas where it needs to feed and to breed, to reproduce, along the road that would be the access for this project. That is only one of over 20 species that are listed under the Species at Risk Act, which we enforce, that occur in our geographical area. Unfortunately, Canada Wildlife Service has not had the opportunity to establish critical habitat for the majority of the other species that reside in our area. It's an ongoing project, but it's a slow-moving beast, and it's going to take a number of years for that to occur. So in the meantime, as we progress in terms of our industry and recreation and all the different ideas and projects that go on in our community, these species, they're not really being spoken for because that habitat hasn't been established in our legislation yet. But to wrap it up, I'll just say that of all the endangered and extirpated and extinct species that we've dealt with in this country over the years, the one thing that's really come to light in my line of work is that the majority of the plants and animals in our world do not do very well around people. In general, adding more people will reduce the wildlife population in a given area. It certainly varies by species, but overall, in my experience, it's been that if we add 100,000 people to this small area per year, as is proposed in the project, that will have a very deleterious result in terms of the wildlife in Squamish. So from my point of view, I think this is the type of project that might be good in some environments, but it's not what we need right now for this particular parcel of land in Squamish. Thanks.
Thank you. Michael Henson, please. Thank you. David Reguer? Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Close. I'll let you introduce yourself.
David Regier is my name. I live at 1003 Balsam Place in Ballycliffe. Thank you for taking this time, Mayor and Council. I have two main concerns that I'd just like to voice here this evening with the project. Some of it's already been talked about to some extent, but the potentially unsafe road access to the project is a concern to me. I know there's been talk about dust already and the dust problem that exists. Can be severe in the summer months, and that is definitely an issue. Visitors, I have a concern with visitors traveling the road. Even with some road improvements, I might have concern with people traveling the road who are not used to or prepared for FSR road conditions. Private motorists may not be used to rough conditions, and sharing the road with large industrial vehicles. In particular, that single-lane bridge on the Squamish River will be a potential, I feel like it's a potential pinch point, and I know there was mention of signage and things like that. I still have a bit of concern with the public. There's plenty of people who are walking, riding bicycles, walking dogs and things like that, and with a single-lane bridge on a gravel road, I just feel like that could be a real safety issue. I guess that and then just the people, the use of the road for people in the neighborhood. The second thing that I'd just like to raise, and it hasn't been clear to me. I know there's talk on the website, or there's some references on the project website about maintaining access for all trail users. I moved here in 2004, and since then I ride dirt bikes. I've had 3 children since I moved here. We all like to ride dirt bikes together, and we enjoy access to the local trails. One of the main access points to the lava flow riding area is along this road, along the road from the Powerhouse Springs Road to parking lots. These parking lots were mentioned. There will still be use of the parking lot. I guess I have a concern, and again, it wasn't clear. There was mention of maintaining access for the kayaks and things like that, but there wasn't any discussion in terms of this sanctioned riding area that I understand was before my time, but the district worked together with community groups, all trail users, to establish these areas, including areas for mountain biking and hiking and multi-use paths, multi-use trails, and so there was a significant amount of work that went into that. And the District Squamish Trail Standards document acknowledges that for safety and maintenance reasons, there's limited access to trails for motorized vehicles, with the exception of maintained service vehicles and battery-powered wheelchairs and carts. Other motorized vehicles may be operated only on specified trails in certain areas. So there's designated areas by the district for this activity, and there's only specified areas and certain areas where this can be done. So it's a concern that if this access is lost, that we're putting this access in this part of our community that's been established to the side. So I guess in summary, I can admire the entrepreneurship, setting up business and creating jobs, but I suggest that the district think about how many natural places we want to turn into pay for access. I guess the question is, shouldn't this be accessible for all community groups and visitors who are passionate about our trails? There's been a lot of work done by trail user groups, mapping, volunteers working together to establish and provide access. And it's a testament of how the communities work together. And I just think that we shouldn't turn our backs on this access issue for the trails. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is Michael Heinrich.
Hello, Council. My name is Michael Heinrich. I am a resident of Ravens Plateau, 2016. This is pretty hard. I got to admit, whoever stood up here before me, I applaud you. I'm shaking like a leaf right now. Primarily because I have so much invested in that. I just recently moved to Squamish. And 4 years, I have a child and a wife and a beautiful home, and we live on what we thought was a peaceful part of Squamish. We moved to get away from the city, and here we are, and it's been great. And now this has come about. And immediately, I'm not going to go into what you already know about the Forest Service Road. It's bad, and that's just it. But when I started to look at some of the numbers of a good comparable, you see, my background is I used to live in Lynn Canyon, and so I spent my entire life growing up in a beautiful area that was rife with popular people with population and visitors. And when I looked at the data that was published online through articles, it was found that 110,000 people is not what they see every year. 2015, they saw 500,000 people. 500,000 people. Even more concerning is when they disclosed when those people arrived. They all arrived within 4 months of the year. Literally 500,000 people in 4 months. 60,000 cars per year. Now, I can't say that that's going to happen here, but I can say Lynn Valley, Lynn Canyon, is a lot like Squamish Canyon. It's at the end of a community. It has a concession stand, it has an ecological center, it has beautiful, majestic platforms where people can look into the water, and it has inviting pools where people can swim, and I spent my youth doing that. And with that came problems. There were many problems that we saw. We saw people jumping into waters, and they didn't, sometimes it was fun, and sometimes it worked out. I did that. But I remember when it didn't work out. I must tell you that I'm also a pre-hospital care provider, and I've been a pre-hospital care provider for 23 years, various different places of the world. And I can tell you that the devastation that occurs from one incident, it'll rock the world for everybody involved. The family, the responders, the people who see it. If someone falls, trips, slips, if someone jumps, it's devastating. And there have been 31 of those cases in the last 24 years. And every year there's hundreds of incidences. The number of fire calls and ambulance calls to Lynn Canyon is multiple. When you approve this project, you need to understand that you're inviting hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, to a very beautiful part of the world where they're going to be overcome by its beauty, and they're going to want to immerse in that beauty, and they're going to come spend their time here in the summertime. In those 4 months, they're going to partake in risky behavior. They're going to utilize alcohol and substances that may cloud their judgment, and it's Pandora's box. It will lead to devastation. The nearest fire department is 20 minutes away. Don't be fooled that it's going to be responding from Valleycliff. That's a training center. Ambulance, police, same thing. It's coming from Finch. It's a long time. It's a long time to let someone suffer at the bottom of a canyon. It's a long time to let someone be hurt with a twisted ankle. It's a long time. We need to think about that. In the end, this is not the safe project that it's proposed to be. There's no signage, there's no fence that's going to prevent people from doing risky behavior. I did it. And if you look online, now with social media, places like Lynn Canyon and Mamquam River are being exploited. It's almost like a rite of passage. There are websites that actually tell people to come here. I want you to think about the repercussions in terms of safety. because this is not as safe project as you think it is. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, Tracy Saxby.
Mayor and Council, thanks for the opportunity to speak today. I just wanted to clarify one thing because most people, my name's Tracy Saxby and I live on 1837 Garden Place in Squamish. Okay. Most people know me as the Executive Director of My Sea to Sky. I just want to be very clear that today, My Sea to Sky has not taken a position on the Squamish Canyon, mostly due to lack of capacity. So I'm here speaking on behalf of myself as Tracy Saxby, a resident of Squamish. I haven't spent a lot of time looking at this proposal. It has been flying a little bit under the radar for me, at least. But I do have a few concerns related to the traffic on the Forest Service Road. Tourism, and it can come with a lot of benefits, but it can also come with a lot of impacts. So, for example, one of the examples of that is tourism can support a lot of fantastic local restaurants, but then on a Saturday night when we all want to go out to eat at those fantastic restaurants, it's an hour and a half wait. So there's pros and cons with everything, and that's just one example of a social impact. There's also a lot of different environmental impacts, the ways that it can influence our community, the community dynamic. So a lot of concerns that I would urge Council to consider when they're making your decisions this evening. With regards to the road, I am concerned about the increase in traffic on that road and the safety concerns on that road. Looking at what's being proposed as well as the highway access, I don't think that that is adequate, particularly when you're coming out of the Mamquam Forest Service Road for vehicles that want to turn left. That's just based on personal experience as a resident of Squamish who goes up to Alice Lake. Trying to turn left from Alice Lake across like a 4-lane highway is very dangerous. And I didn't see in the highway proposed changes for the highway access, any kind of feeder lane to protect vehicles as they're going to the left, similar to what you see at the Squamish Chief access, you know, that kind of protection that exists there. I would also like to urge the proponents, if they are looking for increasing users and having a lot of people accessing that site, to consider public transportation and public transit, tying it into the other existing projects like the Sea to Sky Gondola and the Adventure Centre. Is it possible for there to be improved public transit services that connect those different hubs like the Adventure Centre, the Squamish Canyon, the Sea to Sky Gondola, so that we are eliminating that road traffic and the noise that could result from having that many vehicles going up and down. I am a little bit concerned about the numbers that have been presented tonight because I'm not sure what the Sea to Sky Gondola visitor numbers are, but I know that they are very high. And as more and more people discover Squamish, which is a given, how can we plan for the tourism that is going to inevitably come here and ensure that we have the infrastructure in place to manage that and minimize the impact to the community? Because this is such a fantastic community. So how can we ensure that it continues to be a fantastic community? And those are really just the only concerns I have, again, not having had much time to look into the project itself. Yeah.
Thank you. Next up is Brian Jansen. Just your name and address first, Mr. Jansen.
My name is Brian Jansen from 1465 Olive Street, Pemberton, BC. I would like to thank the council for providing this public hearing. It's been very informative. I believe in Squamish Canyon's vision to provide and share a safe and educational experience. As a family man and a business owner in the Sea to Sky corridor, I am in support of the Squamish Canyon Project.
Thank you. I think you brought your phone.
I'll take my notes.
Okay. Next up, Megan Light? And that's the last name on my list, so then if people do want to speak, just raise your hand. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Megan Light. I live at 2024 Maple Drive. Mayor and Council. There's a couple of concerns that I have. I'm a professional biologist and I've been living in Squamish for the last 4 years. So the first one I have is the bioinventory that was complete, and it was just within the immediate vicinity of the Squamish Canyon. And there was 2 species I noticed right away that were missing. So the harbor seal comes in and feeds on spawning salmon in the Mamquam River. I can attest that because I'm also a whitewater kayaker. So seeing a harbor seal chase a salmon right onto your boat, you're kind of like, wow, pretty magical. So I just noticed those 2 species were missing. And as well as, I believe it was Pippa stated, there was no consideration for the critical habitat and sensitive habitat along the FSR or the adjacent pathways that we know are going to increase with public traffic, which are near sensitive spawning habitats for salmon. So those pathways, we will see an increase, whether people are paying or not, we'll see people coming in there quite drastically. And I am also concerned about those numbers that I'd seen, because the Lynn Canyon numbers, people were seeing 6,000 people a day, and the gondola, we're seeing anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000 people a day. So if we bring those into the Squamish Canyon, or even if they're not paying customers and they're using the adjacent pathways, we're going to see big disruptions to our habitats. So I would really like that to be considered a little bit more thoroughly when we're looking at this project. Also, the sound and light impacts for wildlife need to be considered more thoroughly. I didn't see much of an assessment done for that. I don't know where you are in your permitting phases for the provincial and federal that way, but in regards to how light and sound are going to be impacting, for example, songbirds nesting in the area. As well as I would just like to address the proponent was saying that there was going to be staff that was going to help control the garbage and people and camping, and I was just wondering if that staff is also going to be after hours, because that's where you're going to see those people coming in and camping. Now that more people know about this area, we're going to see those people coming in after hours, and what we are going to do to resolve those issues. As a whole, the environmental management and degradation to the natural landscapes is an ongoing issue in the Sea to Sky corridor that is often overlooked. Each project is individually assessed as opposed to cumulatively, oh my gosh, I can't even speak, to understand the impacts created from an area that does not currently have the infrastructure. Key examples that we all know are Cat Lake, Brome Lake, Murren Park, the Sea to Sky gondola. We've seen an influx of those tourists in those 4 months of prime, and we have interactions with wildlife and garbage and camping. And I think we just need to start looking as a whole at all these projects and how we're developing the area so we can mitigate not each individual project, but each project as a whole in our community. And that's all I have. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Yes, in the front here, in the blue jacket. Start with your name and address.
My name's Jackie Wilcox, and I'm at 38164 Clark Drive in Squamish. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I've been a resident of Squamish since 1996 and came to Squamish for the recreation. My husband's a whitewater kayaker, and we've been going to that site for many, many years. Over the years of going in that area, not just to kayak, but to hike, there's been a lot of garbage, people dumping. There's been a lot of access for camping illegally. There's lots of vans up there. A heck of a lot of traffic goes up and down that road that's unregulated right now. And I do believe that I'm in support of this project, a presence there that will actually improve the road access, improve safety. Sorry, am I too close? Okay. And have a presence in there to be a permanent structure, as Robin had mentioned, having safety people on site, having parking and some amenities will really deter people from going in there and dumping garbage and being unregulated in the area, which I've seen increasing over the last 10, 15 years. I also wanted to speak to the safety aspect that was brought up. I'm on search and rescue, have been for many years, so is my husband. We know Robin through search and rescue, and there have been some tough calls in that area. Robin was involved personally, and I think he's very passionately committed to safety and preventing that kind of thing happening again, and he has put some provisions in the plan for that. And again, having people down there and having a presence will really, I think, improve the safety and the ability to respond to emergencies in that area. It is known. People are going there because it is beautiful, and they're going there unregulated. And to me, having a partnership with the Mamquam Access Society, with the Whitewater Paddlers, and having John Harvey up here to speak to that speaks volumes to me about the coordinated effort of recreationalists in this community that I think really we could build on that and really protect this area. And the last thing I wanted to say is there are a lot of people that were against the Sea to Sky gondola when it was going to be built. And a lot of those people that spoke against it are now up there recreating and really amazed at what a good project that was and how great it's been for Squamish. And I think that the Squamish Canyon could do the same thing for our community. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ms. Wilcox. Other speakers this evening? Yes, sir.
Thank you to the council. My name is Alan Robertson. I live at 38628 on Cherry Drive up in Ravens Plateau. I would like to speak in the form of a question to a matter a pollution matter, which I've never heard raised, even in a place like Squamish. I speak to this because I have been engaged in astronomy for many years. And it's very difficult to see the night sky when there are a lot of lights around. And even from where I am, way up in Ravens Plateau, if I look anywhere toward the west, the lights in the harbor literally blot out much of the night sky. If one goes north on the Sea to Sky Highway and approaches Squamish, you can see the lights up at the gondola. Brilliant lights. Lights cause a lot of pollution in the night sky, and the night is a beautiful natural thing. Light has an enormous effect on people and on wildlife of all forms. I haven't heard anything from the proponent regarding the lighting at this place. I've heard about the sound, and it's going to be controlled between the hours of 10 o'clock in the evening and 8 in the morning. What about the lights? From where I am, that direction is one of the few places where you have no light pollution to speak of. Has anyone considered that at all? I'd be very grateful if someone could speak to that. Thanks very much.
Staff are noting down questions, and they can address them after people have spoken.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you for your question. Other speakers tonight? Yes, in the blue. Then I'll come over here.
Hello and thank you. My name's Karen MacDonald and I'm at 2025 Spruce Drive in Valley Cliff. I've been living in the Sea to Sky area for 26 years. I moved here as an athlete from Ontario. I trained in Whistler for the freestyle ski team, and now I'm a coach, and I also own a business Rocky Mountain Sports Camp, which runs in Invermere, BC, and now in Squamish. It's for kids ages 6 and up, and Squamish Canyon is something that I would love to have the kids go and explore as one of the days for my camp. That's just touching on a little bit of why I'm for Squamish Canyon. I've been through there before. It's absolutely breathtaking. I've been in the tourism business before as well, and just to see people's faces light up when they go and see something spectacular. We would have busloads coming through Squamish from Vancouver. This was 20 years ago, and we would all go into the Shannon Falls, and just to see people's faces and be able to experience that. And these are English second language students from all over the world, and I've traveled all over the world and got to see incredible places, and I think it'll be really awesome for people to come here and be able to see this canyon. So thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman here, yeah.
Hi, Mike Rafferty, 1674 Depot Road. I'd just like to put my support for the project forward. You know, I think there's a lot of people coming up to Squamish for a lot of things: mountain biking, climbing, you know, ski, snowboard, sled, gondola, so on and so forth. But there's not a lot of lower impact, kind of less extreme stuff, you know, for Squamish. I think this is a complementary project. I don't necessarily think that it's going to be drawing millions of people on its own, but I think it complements some of the tourism opportunities that are already here. Obviously, there's concerns with every project, and no project is perfect, but I think the proponent has done a lot of work with groups that initially opposed to try and mitigate their concerns and try and find a happy medium for most anyways. So just like to throw my support on.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to do 2 more speakers, and then I'm going to just give council a 5-minute break, because we've been in meetings since 9 a.m. this morning, and so it would be good to get up and stretch a little bit. So I'll do 2 more speakers. So the woman here in the middle, and then diagonal at the back, and then we'll take a 5-minute recess.
Yeah, let them know they're going to get a chance to speak, so we don't freak out.
And then we'll come back, like we're not leaving. We'll stick around.
Just felt frantic from that.
Hi, my name's Cami Tedder, and I'm at 38641 Cherry Drive. A lot of the things that have been mentioned today are obviously big concerns for the residents in this neighborhood. I do feel as though the tourism in Squamish, I mean the gondola and what it has to offer and how much it's brought into the town and what it is that people are able to see that we have to offer, has been a great thing. Sometimes, you know, too much too soon is the way I'm sort of looking at this project and how it affects the residents in the area. Not just that, the wildlife. I use those areas and those trails on a daily basis. I've been almost hit by a car twice. My dog's almost been run over. There's a lot of concerns in regards to the traffic volume that will increase over time with this project. I'm shaking because I don't get up and speak very often. So I'm like, I don't think that now is the right time to be putting something like this forward in this particular area. I feel very strongly at the fact that this isn't going to be an access area that most residents will use. It's going to become something that is busloads of people coming in to check out what that area has to offer. If you look at the Sea to Sky gondola, whom I do a lot of business with, the amount of busloads that come in there on a daily basis throughout the summer, and it is going to piggyback off of that, because what's going to happen is it'll be marketed in a way where it'll start with the gondola, come to the canyon. It'll be a trickle-down effect. We're not prepared to actually service all of these people and that particular road. And I know Philippa had more to say in regards to the access point and how they're accessing. There's no other way in or out. There's one road. That's it. This is something that really affects the residents in the area. We've had to deal with LNG. Now we've got to go through this process, and I think a lot of people are feeling very frustrated and also not included in the early stages of communicating about this. I only got a letter in the mail, 2 weeks ago, and we all just learned about this hearing, and then there was a massive, gathering of people's mindsets and feelings, and hence we're here today. And I know there's a lot of people that are they look at this project as something that's beneficial, and perhaps in time it will be. The road needs to be paved. That's a big issue. And there's a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration, and the environment and the animals and everything like that. That's something that I don't think we're paying enough attention to. So that's what I would like to say. I'm not at all on board with this project. Thank you very much.
Okay. Whose hand did I acknowledge? Oh, right back there, yep. And then we'll take a 5-minute break and then come back for more. So just your name and address, please.
I'm Sarah Bailey. I live at 40500 Highlands Way North. New resident to Squamish. I'm a 2008 Canadian Olympic athlete in the sport of whitewater kayak, and I'm also a civil engineer. By no means am I anti-development as a civil engineer, but this land is zoned for RS1. So even if it all could be developed, you have a plot that you can build on. That's a defined number of units. Your traffic impact assessment looks very different for an RS1 zoned lot than it does for a tourist attraction. And I think my main concern is there are some growth predictions, there's some estimated numbers, but that's very different, and it's a complete unknown to an RS1 zoned lot, where you can define it, you know how many people are going to be there. So the argument that this is saving land from being developed, I don't necessarily buy that, because I think a tourist attraction is very, very different beast that is unknown to all of us. As an athlete and as a whitewater paddler, we can make it work. We always make it work. But it's a beautiful, majestic place, and being on the water there and being by yourself and headed down there and getting changed down there in the middle of the woods is an amazing experience. And we moved to Squamish to bring our kids to the outdoors. I've paddled on rivers all over the world, some man-made, some artificial, and this is a beautiful, beautiful place, and I want to maintain that. I don't want to be walking around with my kayak with people over top of us. We'll manage it, but I would really prefer not to have to experience that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we are going to take a 5-minute recess just to give everyone a chance to stand up and stretch, and then we'll come back for more speakers. Thank you. All right, so we're back in the public hearing. There was a gentleman over here that had his hand up earlier. No, he may have left. Okay, so with the glasses first, and the one behind you.
Hi, my name's James King, and I live at 40657 Government Road in Squamish. I really appreciate everybody kind of laying out their concerns and the potential costs over the Squamish Canyon Project. I wanted to touch on some of the numbers that came out today, which I think are beneficial in looking at some of the benefits and some of the overall quantifiable numbers, in addition to some qualifiers. I think what's important right now is the overall economic impact. Right now in Squamish, tourism creates 788 jobs and an estimated $92.5 million. That's considerable. In terms of people participating in Squamish tourism, it's 615,000. Michael Porter, a business analyst, recognizes that new business very successfully will have a 3% penetration rate when they enter the marketplace. These are very, very important numbers when you look at how important tourism is to Squamish in general. I'm highly supportive of the project, and I recognize other qualifying factors that are also important to the community. We have to protect our natural ecosystems. What I commend Robin for doing is that the opportunity cost of this project would have been that this would have been logged. He bought a 10-year parcel of property and improve the condition long-term for not only the ecosystems, but also a place for our kids to play outside, a place for physical activity. This boosts people's mental health, and it can become a center of our community and best practice for environmental and tourism causes. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. King. The woman there in the purple.
Hi, my name's Dee Gerhardt, 38639 Cherry Drive in Ravens Plateau. I guess I just wanted to speak to my experience as a resident in the neighborhood where it's going to be impacted, particularly along the Forest Service Road. Just to get a picture of sort of what I like to do is I have a dog and I like to take him for walks, and the Forest Service Road is right in my neighborhood, and that's actually part of the route that I walk my dog along. And you know, just hearing the numbers tonight about the increase in traffic along that road, I'm actually pretty astonished, and I just feel like there needs to be another road access. I just don't think the Forest Service Road is one that is going to be able to sustain that amount of traffic. And for me personally, I can't even imagine continuing to walk my dog, for example, in the route that we normally do. Because like right now when a car passes, you have to get to the side so that there's enough room for the car to go and for my dog and I to safely stand to one side. I couldn't even imagine if there's two cars going down along that road at the same time. So one passing in one direction and the other going in the opposite direction. There's really not enough space for a person and a dog to even stand. So I don't know, safety along the road, the dust and all of the pollution, and obviously the hearing about the ecosystems that along the road too. I'd like to know more about that before that. So that's kind of my main concern.
Thank you. Other hands? People who haven't spoken yet. I'll come back to you, Ms. Clark. I know that you want to speak again, but I'm going to let other people speak first. So I'll take this hand here and then over here. And then I'm going to go to staff to answer some of the questions we've had along the way.
Todd Gerhardt, 38639 Cherry Drive. First of all, I'd just say I generally would prefer that public assets be taken care of by public entities. The model for a kind of a canyon project really should be like the way the Maligne Canyon is dealt with in Jasper National Park. These are magical places. They should be accessible to people, and to the extent we need to make that access better, the perfect model would be to do it in a way that is a public, take that public resource and invest public monies into it. That would be ideal. Regrettably, in this, the way we are now, at least in British Columbia, that's not always the way things can be. I think it's really useful, though, when we look at once we're allowing private entities to really profit off our public amenities, to remember the gondola, because it is often, well, it has been tonight, used as the example of a success. But you have to remember that the first gondola proposal was to put the gondola on top of the chief. And there was widespread public condemnation of that idea, because not because in the end, as the proposal ultimately came together and to put the gondola in a different place, and ultimately, as someone's pointed out, that's turned out to be very valuable to the community, and a lot of good things came, even from those who initially would have been opposed. But the people that initially opposed it on top of the chief, I would say, were not wrong, because the plan wasn't quite right. And to me, the fatal flaw in this proposal is access. That road, I don't think we can credibly suggest that the road beside the Squamish River can handle anything like the traffic that is proposed here. To me, there's got to be, I don't know if it's possible to come in from the other side, that is from the north side. There's some additional river crossing and some land there that have to sort it out. Of course, there's roads there. But whether or not that's possible, in which case you already have most of the way paved to about the golf course. You have a little bit after that and a cut across to deal with. I don't know if anyone's ever considered that. But I know this, That road and those, whatever it is, 8 or 9 kilometers from the highway up to the L and down the Powerhouse Road, that road can't support the traffic. There's no way that bridge is going to be safe for people, and it's going to have major impacts, again, as we've heard, on the residents. To me, the only solutions are either pave that road, and again, it's not right for a proponent to come and say, I'll do that later. To me, if you're going to have a business plan that's going to have those impacts, you need to be able to capitalize the costs of that at the front end. I suspect that may not be practical, and that may show that the balance that's being proposed in terms of accessing and profiting from the public resource isn't right. The other possibility that I would suggest, I would strongly urge council to consider, is to say we will not allow private vehicles to park there. You limit the parking or however you deal with it, and find a busing solution. There's a lot of businesses that will use that as a method to get people when you've got a problem like this one, a road that's simply not meant to carry that kind of traffic. That is, then you have to have a muster point for your clients that meet. We put you on a bus and we get there. And there's all kinds of businesses, obviously, up and down the corridor that have to rely on that model, heli skiing and all kinds of things like that, where you just can't get the people to where your takeoff point is. So I think that for me, that road can't handle it. There needs to be a credible solution to how access is dealt with to the site. And I think that's the issue that confronts council, and finding a credible way to be able to get people there should you see fit to go down this road. That's what needs to be sorted out, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there no hand? Oh yeah, I was over here. Thank you. Took me a second, Robert. I got there. I knew I had asked someone.
That's all good.
Come forward.
Mayor Council, my name is Robert Forsyth. I live at 40178 Faith Road. I've been a resident of Squamish for, 35 years or something like that. Most of you of the council know me. And I grew up in Valleycliff. I currently live in Brackendale. So it's not really in my backyard. So I'm not really concerned about the traffic from my backyard. But I do know how I've seen the rise and increase in tourism has affected our public services, our municipal swimming pool, our different daycares. Everything else is the cost of housing. Everything is increased by this big push to have more people, more tourism in Squamish, and it is affecting the people that live here. So my question for council is, for one, I'm not super familiar with this particular project and the location exactly, but to me it seems like it's up behind the RS1 zoning within our municipal boundaries from the lower end of Valleycliff. Now, to my understanding, that area was supposed to be developed prior to the Highlands area being developed, the Chima lands and all that, under the master plan because of the location and the zoning. So for one, I wonder, how is that area serviced with water, electricity, and all the other different aspects of it? How will this impact future development of the land? Because there's quite a lot of land there to be developed. So as Squamish expands, that's kind of where we're going to be expanding to. So will this traffic 100,000, potentially 400, 500,000 people a year annually in a 4-month period of time, how will that impact the housing develops in the future up towards in the area, and as we expand our boundaries? I know we also have the watershed up there. I just don't quite understand. I'm not in support of this particular project. Like I said, like the one gentleman that was just here, it seems to me like it's a public project. It should be something that the province does. It should be like the chief, if that's what they're going to do. But it is a private entity that's going to be making a profit off of a public facility and literally inconveniencing everybody else around. I'm not totally opposed to having more tourists come to Squamish, but I'd like to have it done in a safe way. We've got so many existing trails, existing locations that really need to be upgraded and maintained in a proper plan, a proper safety plan put for those locations before we even bring an extra 500,000 people potentially into one area south of Squamish. I'd like to see if the RCMP, what their statement is on having 500,000 extra people in there. How our costs are going to, skyrocket if we have to hire more police forces just to manage that particular area. The hours of operation closed at 10 o'clock. So if I'm heading up the hill there at 9 o'clock, the bridges or the gates at the very top, it just seems like we're opening a whole bunch of potential problems. We've already had problems on the FSR with people camping during the festivals, swimming in the river, making dams. I've been on 4 or 5 dam removal, taking dams down so that our salmon can flow up that area there. It's extremely sensitive, and I don't think that the proper studies have been done from what I'm listening to other people here, which really concerns me is on the access. And I think really we do need to focus on what that access is, how that access is going to affect the future development of the rest of the RS1 zoning as Squamish expands, and will that have, I personally think it has going to have negative impact. I don't like the amount of people that are pushing out into our forests and leaving their garbage. It's ridiculous. I've had to go and clean up the garbage with lots of other volunteers. And I mean, I'm not against tourism. I'm not against the tourism dollars. But when one prominent makes the tourism dollars and it's not being spread around the community to the degree of repair, I'm a little bit questioned and concerned. So that's pretty much what I have to say. But I mean, has the police, have they discussed, how are they going to be safely securing people there? The problem is talking about, when the hours, they're not closing a gate at the very bottom. I mean, the gondola is a total different game. The gondola is right at the highway. It's very visible for police. It's easy for them to see if there's any activity occurring in the parking lot. But that area there, going all the way up behind Valley Cliff, access from all sorts of different access. Now they're going to put a trail. So now the kids that are going to walk the trail there at night, it just doesn't make any sense that we're trying to bring people in that massive a quantity just slightly outside of the area and creating such a risk for the service providers, our hospitals, police department, fire department, and so forth. So that's all I really have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the gentleman over here and then give staff a chance to respond to some of the questions and comments.
Council, Madam Mayor. My name is Sergio Laconin. I live at 2022 Balsam Way, Squamish. And I would like to express we talk about a lot of technical aspects of this project. We talk about environmental, impact, everything, but how about us, residents of this area? I'm talking about Balsam Way, Cherry Drive, Balsam Corner, and it's a very close, there is a stretch of the houses, probably 8 to 10 houses, which are very close to this road. And even now, like those logging trucks, they do engine brakes, 4:35 a.m. We come home, we all work hard, and we come home for peace. We don't have it anymore. And you can imagine what's going to happen if all these cars will start drive back and forth during the day. We will not have sleep there. We will not have peace there. That's all I can tell you. Even now, look what's happening. People from Vancouver, from all over, they come to, to learn more about Squamish. And weekends, you can hardly find place on our road to park. You can only park on your driveway. Everything else is just tourists, in commerce. And you can imagine what's going to happen after this project gets to life. That's all I can tell you. Think about our residents, Squamish. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So I'm sure council has a few questions, but staff, you've heard a number of questions. Maybe start with the road and access.
Where to begin? Okay, so, and I apologize if I miss an item. I've been frantically making notes, trying to capture them all. So, council, heard a number of comments and questions to provide some clarity around road safety and what is proposed for the road. First one, mixed users, and also a comment on inexperienced drivers. So the applicant is proposing to address this through signage, other upgrades such as trimming or I guess clearing of brush to improve sightlines. In terms of how inexperienced drivers or people who are not used to driving on logging roads might interact with logging vehicles or industrial users, this was something that we discussed with the province. So for information for the public who might not know, this FSR is not in our jurisdiction. We don't control it. We don't control it. It is under operation and control from the province, so from FLINRO. And so we've been working closely with FLINRO to review this. We ultimately defer to their experience when it comes to logging roads and the impacts of putting tourism or putting non-industrial users onto the road. And their comments back were that they see this quite often throughout the province. And for this project, with the given numbers, they saw the same estimates that we're looking at. They did not have much concern. So I'll speak about the bridge because that's all kind of tied to that. The bridge is a single lane bridge. Once again, signage is being proposed. And once again, specifically on the bridge, there was no comment from FLINRO about negative impacts or any concerns around safety of using that bridge for this purpose. Parking along road is actually ultimately, once again, an issue for FLINRO. Camping, we have our camping bylaw, so that is something that district bylaw staff would be able to address. In terms of dust, so just another point of clarity, so it's clear the applicant is planning on upgrading the road through a form of regrading as well as applying dust mitigation, as well as having budget available for future dust applications throughout the year. So currently there is limited dust application. The district, as you see in the yellow dotted line on the slide there, that is the only place that we apply dust application right now, and I am not aware of anyone else applying any kind of dust mitigation along that road. There is grading along that road by other users, but the district does not complete that. Once again, the responsibility for that ultimately falls under the road users that are under the permit given to them by FLINRO, by the ministry. So complaints actually should be going to the ministry. We do field complaints, but we should also be forwarding those all on to the ministry because it is actually up to the ministry to be enforcing the requirements that are within their road use permits. I hope that's clear as to what that process looks like. So in terms of how this project might impact dust, because dust is obviously a major concern along this road. As I said, they're going to be applying a dust application. Yes, there are going to be more cars. At the same time, the types of vehicles, going back to the mixed users, the types of vehicles and the types of drivers are going to need a higher standard of road. So through a kind of process of natural requirement for this project to be successful and to be able to draw users in, you can assume that there is a requirement to uphold a certain road standard. That road is really bad right now for anyone who's using it. I don't think anyone's debating that. So we anticipate through this for the road condition to be better. That being said, there will be more road users. So there is the opportunity to kick up more dust. That being said, there's also a requirement under the road use permits to apply dust control. So at this point, staff's opinion is that we should actually see improvements along the length of this road over what we're currently seeing. And that is our opinion at this point. With regards to noise, there will be increase in noise. There's, sorry? Oh, and do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, maybe I'll jump in to speak to noise. So the noise study did look at the amphitheater, but it also did look at the noise at the Cherry Lane area. And they did record that the resting noise of that area is 45 decibels, and that included the traffic that goes down there. It's not including definitely those honking horns of the logging trucks, but this application is not proposing to be adding more of those noises, just the regular vehicle noises, which currently is recorded at 45 decibels. It's not a full study of the road, but it does speak to that particular area, which some concerns were voiced about.
So there was a question about access for dirt bikes or other motorized vehicles. This project is not restricting access up the road, up Powerhouse Springs Road to the lava trails. So I just want to provide that clarity. Finally, on the road, there have been questions about other access points. So with the idea coming in, I believe, from Quest. So if you were to build a road from Quest, there'd be two routes at this point. One would be going up Mamquam, where it goes from pavement to gravel by Paco Road. And right now that road is not, specifically that road is on private property, and it is not deemed a safe access road at this point. It is actually closed to the public. So there'd be significant upgrades required for that, and right now it is not a viable option. To go up through Quest would also involve significant upgrades of the gravel road that would then actually take vehicles directly through our Powerhouse Springs well field, which is undesirable from a water protection standpoint. It also would mean routing all the traffic up through Quest, which when you talk about a single way in, from a design or best practice, we would not want to put more vehicles through Quest when we could route them through a different direction. So at this point, the only access point is through the FSR. You could, in theory, also go through Valley Cliff, but that would be putting vehicles onto Cherry Drive through the access gate there. So that is also not desirable for this project. There was a question about funding for the intersection upgrades. That would be funded by the applicant, just to provide that clarity. There were questions about the gate and how that works. So the yellow gate as you see it would be moving. I don't know if you can bring up the slide. Mm-hmm. The yellow gate as you would see it would be moving to where that red line is now. Right now it's at the yellow line. And in place of that yellow gate where it is now, would, in that general area, would be essentially a chain with signage saying authorized vehicles only. How it operates right now is that gate is open during the day. Anyone can drive in and out at this point. After roughly 5 p.m., that gate is locked for the evening. The district actually gets phone calls on a somewhat regular basis for people who have gone down that road later in the day and then get stuck. And we have to come and open the gate because they don't know who else to call. So this is actually an improvement for us because the gate will be out of sight. The yellow gate, which is in the red line, which will be in the red line, will be moved out of sight, out of sight, and in its place will be essentially an always closed gate. People who are allowed to go in will be able to open in and access as required. But the general public, this will hopefully keep the general public from driving through. So this is actually an improvement, and our public works staff very much support this to avoid unnecessary call-outs. So I hope that provides clarity on how the gate will work. There was also questions about emergency access, specifically RCMP. Emergency access for any of the emergency responders would be the same for everyone else. It would be along the Mamquam FSR. Finally, in terms of, ask Robin to comment.
You can bring him up later.
In terms of security, there might be some clarification that can be provided on security by the applicant. So you might want to ask him to comment on that later.
Okay.
Thanks.
Council, any questions at this point? Councilor Pettengill, and then I'll come down to you, Councilor Anderson.
So there's been some questions about future land use, including RS1 housing, possibly. We could always change the zoning, except we're sort of restricted in changing it to park, but other than that, we could theoretically change the zoning. Is that correct?
I'll pass that one to you, Yanez.
My name is Jan Swanishkis. Yes, that is correct. We do regulate zoning,
in this area. There is an envisionment that the neighborhood is going to grow. We don't know whether it's going to be RS1 lands or not. That decision hasn't been made. It's the zoning that's in place now, but it is likely to change in the future.
So, and just understanding or trying to understand how that relates to logging, first on this particular site, so there was a forestry tenure sort of regardless of the RS1, because I believe this is Crown land, this particular piece. So this, as I understand it, this project removed that license, so it as now can no longer be logged. If this project didn't proceed, do we have a sense of, one, what the turnaround would be before the province could decide to log it again, to grant someone a tenure, and then also, as a municipality, would we have any say in that?
So it might be a good question back to the applicant, but my understanding is that if this doesn't proceed, the applicant who has purchased these rights could sell those rights back, and that the district would not have any authority to stop the logging of this area.
Yeah. So just along the southeast side, along the road, there is a gap between Squamish Park and the road itself. Is any of that land loggable? Because we've heard a lot of questions about possible ecological impacts along the roadway, but is there anything stopping that area beside the road right now from being logged, sort of separate from this project? Just to put some context around.
Could you clarify the location you're speaking to?
So at various pieces along the road, when I trace the route of the road from the highway, there's sort of green space between the road and the park, which I'm presuming some of that is available for logging, or no, or do we have a sense of that?
So I'm not positive on the logging rights in those areas, but I can speak to the fact that logging rights do have to fall under provincial regulations for environmental protection. And so if it is within 30 meters from a stream or water course, that you wouldn't be able to log those. So I don't know because the road does follow a water course or some of those pieces, that would be a restriction, but I can't speak to the rest of the properties at this time.
Yes, we've had a couple of correspondents address the issue of groundwater protection. And I just wondered if I could have a summary of the initiatives and consideration being taken regarding groundwater protection. One of our correspondents has quite a lot of knowledge here, having installed some of the systems in the area as a district contractor. Specifically, under the zoning conditions, you have in an earlier slide outlined water main protection and type 2 septic system. Also, in the most recent report from staff, we have an updated sewage treatment that is addressed. And I'm just wondering, would those three elements summarize our efforts and in the area of groundwater protection?
I can speak to the zone briefly. So the groundwater protection zone, this is a map that came directly from the report that basically informed the creation of this zone. And this is the protection area in the red. And as you can see, the protection area expands to the north and to the east away from the property. And the property right down below, the Squamish Canyon Project, which is in the yellow there, the septic area are basically to the farthest southeast or southwest corner is where it will be located. And I can have Devin speak to a little bit more of the process, but ultimately it is an approval of Vancouver Coastal Health that they have to go through to review this around that. But it is far away from that protection area that the district has is protecting with the P6 zone. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you nailed it.
Is that okay?
Is that?
Yes, that does satisfy my concern. I also wonder if I may bring up safety at the Mancun Forest Service Road Highway 99 intersection. That we have at a previous presentation from staff at a committee meeting discussed this matter, and I understand that there will be some raised channelized islands in the intersection, and I just wanted to be assured that this should not present a constraint for future improvements of that intersection, namely a protected laneway from the west side from Site B, so that the Site B interests, Squamish Nation, the logging companies working there, are satisfied with this design. Secondly, and I'll just let you address that, and I have another matter to bring up concerning this intersection.
Sure. So our understanding of this design, which, I mean, this isn't a design, this is a concept that was proposed by Bunt, who was a professional that completed the traffic impact assessment. Our interpretation is that it will not impact any of the discussions that have gone, or any of the other proposed options for the Site B side. So in order to put in a slip lane for left turns out of Site B, we don't anticipate this would interfere. Either way, the report also recommends that any upgrades of this intersection should be undertaken with integration, or integrating any considerations from Site B as well. So all designs need to go through the necessary channels and correspondence to make sure that
Thank you. Another safety issue at this intersection has been a long-standing one, and one that has grown over time with the gondola traffic, and that are U-turns on the part of gondola visitors heading southbound back to the city on the highway. And the report suggests providing a U-turn signage from the Sea to Sky gondola directing southbound traffic to the chief parking lot, rather than turning at this intersection. Now, we see signage referred to there, but is there will there be active encouragement? Has there been commitments or consultations with the Sea to Sky gondola regarding this? Because this has been a long-standing problem. Signage, is that enough? Will there be an has there been consultations with the gondola to really activate this option for traffic?
Sure, yeah. So from the gondola's perspective, yes, they are on board with this, and they have confirmed this with the applicant. Ultimately, though, any signage needs to be approved by MOTI as well, on top of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor French?
We heard earlier about the limitations of access from the Garibaldi Highlands, Garibaldi Estates side of the Malcolm River. Just will you confirm that there is no vehicle crossing of Ring Creek, which would be one further limitation of accessing from that side?
Ring Creek.
Carpenter's Sons
You're
Bridge.
right, yeah, at this point, there'd be Carpenter's Sons Bridge, so there would also have to be another bridge put in crossing Ring Creek, correct?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do you have a question?
I do. The highway section, if you want to bring that up, where does the 60K zone start there? I always get it, I know I'll probably get it wrong when I come down that hill, but that's prior to this intersection.
You and me
I'm
both.
just asking for
Good
a
of you
friend.
to admit it.
But, yeah, is it to the south of
It's
of
to the
this?
south, approximately 100 meters, 150 meters around
Yeah,
there.
someone's comment earlier sort of sparked that with me when we were talking about the intersection, and there are challenges up at Alice Lake, but this being a 60 is helpful. Whether people are actually traveling at 60 there is is an aside. But in the traffic study, I didn't see a number that I was looking for, which was just a percentage increase over what's existing, because it's been covered, and a lot of the people that spoke tonight, and it's a lot of the correspondence about how busy it is in general. So we saw the numbers that they were going to add, but I was trying to compare that to what's existing and understanding what that is. And we had a growth rate in highway traffic factored in there, but I didn't really, and if it was there, I missed it. Could you speak to, is there a percentage you could give us somewhere along the way there that would help us sort of put it in context?
Yeah, there's not really a slide to pull it up. Are you specifically speaking about the intersection because we focused kind of on the worst case scenario, and then also compared it with typical times. So worst case scenario being at the busiest time, essentially.
Yeah, just the numbers seem to be from a baseline of 0 on the road. As presented, the existing traffic was kind of considered 0, and then it showed above that. But I was just trying to understand if we're talking about the tip of the iceberg or if that's the majority of the traffic projected on the road.
Oh, okay.
I
And
don't
are
know if I'm
you-
phrasing my question quite efficiently
And just for
enough.
clarity, you're speaking about people accessing Mamquam?
Yeah, on the Mountain Forest Service Road. There's a lot of traffic there, and this projected increase, I saw it expressed as numbers, but I didn't see it expressed as an increase, a percentage increase from
Certainly.
the existing traffic, which seems to be quite busy.
I have it written on a board in my office, and it's in my head, but I want to tell you what I know, not what I think I know. Can I come back to that
Yeah,
question? Is that
I think-
allowed?
yep,
Because I
that
can
will.
dig it up out of this report in front of me.
Okay.
if you want. Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Were there any other things you want to address now, or can I go back out to the?
I had a few comments for clarification. So there was some mention made of the comparison to Alice Lake, and I just wanted to confirm that Alice Lake annual visitation is 500,000, and this one is projected to be 137 in 3 years, as well as the Alice Lake is at an 80-kilometer speed zone, and this is a 60-kilometer speed zone. There's also a comparison made to the Lynn Canyon site, and I just want to clarify that the Lynn Canyon site is a public access space that doesn't have staff monitoring it, such as the way this would be designed, as well as these trails and pathways will all be enclosed with railings, and so there is no opportunity to deviate off the pathway. So it's just a very different design for that comparison. The last piece is which we've already spoken to, which is the relatively untouched land, or this is not the right time. This is really part of the logging rights balance and what could happen if this were not to proceed, then it could be logged. So I think it's just an important consideration with not perceiving this as this will be what it is today forever. And I believe those are and not enough parking concern. I don't have a great visual for this, but I did want to clarify that unfortunately it's not a great visual, but let's see if I can get this going. I don't know, the parking that's currently proposed for 100 stalls gets you to about this point. And so there is room for growth if there is a need for it, but as per the visitation study, we're expecting that 100 parking stalls will be sufficient, and that at least around another 25 are proposed in order to go to phase 2. So that, and they also have mitigation measures for the parking, so currently staff isn't concerned around parking capacity at this location.
Okay. I'm going to ask council to hold questions, and we're going to go back out to the public. So there's a few more hands. There's one here at the front.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Mo Freitag, 642 Lower Crescent, Britannia Beach, British Columbia. I'm not going to speak for or against the project because I don't really know enough about who visits canyons and what they do there. However, I will speak to some of the comments earlier, having been the person who chaired the gondola meetings for the majority of what you see to be the gondola today. Squamish owning the lower section, SLRD governing over the upper section. And I'll relate this to cumulative impacts, and I've heard that comment several times tonight. So we have environment, we have traffic, public safety, public health, public access, and taxpayers paying for it. And unfortunately, with all these proposals, and we never seem to do it better no matter how hard we try, we look at them in isolation. And now we have Shannon Falls at what used to be 550,000 visitors a year when I worked there 2007 and did the refit. We have Sea to Sky Gondola. We have the canyon, all within about kilometer and a half. We have 4 accesses and egresses in there, and the traffic work that should have been done at the gondola when it happened didn't happen, and now we have a light at Shannon Falls and a light across the bridge. Across the bridge at Squamish Nation. And we have Site B that's developed intensely since then, and we have these accumulative impacts. We have all this traffic coming out of all these venues all day long, and I come from Britannia to Squamish sometimes several times a day, unfortunately, and there's been many close calls. We have our search and rescue, and somebody was speaking as a member of that, and those, since we've had the gondola, since we've had more access to the chief and more recreation in the area, those are cumulative impacts to that organization. And as I was mentioning to Councillor Anderson earlier, we don't do a good job of measuring that over time and what those costs and what those challenges are. We each year get a report and we just move forward. And so I think my perspective of this is that it could be a great idea, could be a great project, but I think I would err on the side of caution rushing a decision. And I'm not suggesting that the proponent should be left hanging or paying for more studies. I think it's the responsibility of the public governing body to take the initiative of having perhaps their staff look at these cumulative impacts, and are they good, bad, or otherwise? Because it's getting really busy. Living in Britannia, we used to have traffic till about 6:37 at night on the highway. Now it's nothing for me to walk out my door and see steady traffic till midnight. So it's just something to think about. Like I said, I don't have a position on this particular project. I know if we're going to rely on the province to do enforcement and all those things, you can forget it. They don't have any money and there's nobody enforcing. Okay, Ministry of Environment, I think, has 2 agents in the whole province. I don't know what Flynn Row has, but my guess is they have less. The argument about logging on the property, I think that's a mute argument. I think if the District of Squamish really went to the province and said we didn't want this area logged for these specific reasons, I really think you would have a strong case there. So I really highly doubt that area would be logged again anytime soon. But anyway, those are my comments, and good luck with your decision. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Other speakers? Yeah, at the back. Just your name and address to start, please.
It's Adrian Paula, live on Britannia Ave in Squamish. Just wanted to bring up a few points. I do a lot of traveling and work in New Zealand, and I thought there's kind of some important parallels to draw there in terms of the economy and what they rely on, and the model that I think BC should potentially be looking at shifting towards. In New Zealand, I don't know what the stat is for BC, but I would imagine it's about a quarter of this. But in New Zealand, tourism is 20% share of their exports, so it's their biggest national export. And everything they kind of do as a nation helps support tourism. And so when there's challenges such as they have thousands of single-lane bridges, they have dirt roads that are part of their national highway systems. Obviously, there are risks with bringing people from other countries and putting them on the other side of the road and having them drive around the country doing road trips. But I think from their perspective, they look at it more holistically, like, this is what we're basing our country on moving forward. And I think that BC really needs to look at that. And this project specifically really would help to the challenges that we're sort of talking about with this project, I think, by looking at a place like New Zealand, we can really sort of find some solutions, or at least holistically take a step back and go, okay, well, yeah, there are some challenges, but we can address them with X, Y, and Z and make this thing happen. So, Squamish being mainly a natural resource-based economy with the logging, industrial waterfront, the rail yard, high-tension power lines on the other side of the water, there's wood fiber. I think that any sort of tourism project, and this one I am more so in support of than a lot of any other one really, because of some of the aspects that the proponent has put into his plan. But I just think that any sort of tourism project where they have good intentions and they have a good plan for mitigating risks, that's really going to drive our economy into the future and sort of reduce our reliance on these things that, you know, we don't necessarily complain about looking at the industrial waterfront there when we drive into town, but that's what everyone's looking at. So this is just a much better step forward, in my opinion. And I do think there are, you know, a lot of concerns about the environmental impact of this project. I think if we just took this little plot of land in comparison to the impacts of logging in the area, and in BC in general, you know, obviously there's riparian buffers around all waterways and whatnot, but I think that this project is pretty minuscule in comparison to the impact that we see with logging in all of these areas and right around this project site. Just wanted to make a point as well. I don't think it's fair to draw parallels to free, like, public parks such as Lynn Canyon, Alice Lake, Shannon Falls. You know, stuff that's free, people will go to in Thords, and like having a ticketed, controlled area is a solution to overcrowding at those areas rather than being seen as this additional negative part. I think it's really the solution is controlling the flow, making it all safe, having the proper parking, having waste disposal. So yeah, instead of contributing to that problem, the Joffrey Lakes problem, if you will, it's really going to help move it in the other direction. And finally, one of the points I wanted to make as well, just with the way the proponent has structured the business, going for the B Corp certification. I think that's not something that was mentioned in the presentation here, but you know, working in sort of project development myself, that the only thing that you could say that could possibly come up where the proponent, the values of the project would get compromised is maybe when an external investor comes in and says profit, profit, profit. But by baking that B Corp certification like directly into this corporation, I think the project plan here really has proven that, you know, the values and the integrity of the project aren't just make-believe, and it's not just saying that to get through the planning process and then, you know, try and suck all the money out of it that you
Just have a
can.
few seconds left.
So yeah, I just want to commend that part of the business. I think that those are really undervalued, and yeah, it's just really admirable that the project has that in the plan. Thank you.
Other speakers that haven't spoken yet this evening? Yep.
Good evening, Council. My name is Michael Henson. I live at 1150 Bailey Street. First of all, I just want to say thank you. You guys have a hard job, and it doesn't get any easier, obviously. The last time that many people left on me was when I started my stand-up career, so not really sure what's going on. So first of all, I just want to acknowledge everyone who has spoken tonight. You know, this is one of the things I love about living in a society like this, is that, you know, people with so much passion get to express themselves, and we get to listen to a lot of viewpoints that we hadn't heard before or hadn't considered. And it's one of the reasons why I'm here, and it's kind of how our society works. For me personally, I came to Squamish for recreation. You know, I paddle the rivers, I rappel the canyons, I hike the mountains. It's what I do here, and it's something that's really important to me, is to maintain that sort of access. And, you know, although I'd love to have all those places to myself, the reality is that as growth happens, and, you know, we're nestled between Vancouver and Whistler, it's kind of inevitable that we're going to feel that sort of pressure. And, you know, the reality is that I know that those places that I love, I can't keep them all for myself unless I go further out. So I'm kind of recognizing that, you know, the Mumquam is somewhere I spend a lot of time, and it's a place that I love, but it's so close that the reality is that people are coming. I was there a few weeks ago. There are a couple of Instagrammers there taking pictures. I asked them how they found out about the place, They said it was from an Instagram post they'd seen. I let them go. They wandered down onto the rocks. They're taking pictures of themselves standing on the edge of the rocks, to the point where it was felt the need to go and tell them, don't stand on the slippery rocks and fall into the water. You're going to die. And maybe you need to take your picture a little bit further back. So I'm very clear that the reality is that those people are coming, and that sort of social media scaled growth is going to happen whether we like it or not. And so, you know, I'm thinking about some other places in the province I like to go. My favourite hot springs was Keyhole Hot Springs up near Pemberton. And years ago, I used to go there and be the only person there, and I loved it, and take friends there, and it was an amazing place. I can't go there anymore because of the unregulated tourism has led to people feeding bears. Bears now know that backpacks are where you get food, and you've got people being chased away by grizzlies, they shut it down. And I can't go there now, and for the whole summer. So I'm very, very keen to see the places I love be places I can continue to visit, and the places that I need to be alone, I can find those places as well. So I think, you know, my only request is that, you know, the difficult job that you guys have to do is that we elect you and employ you to be stewards for the growth of Squamish. And through the OCP and other plans that you have and other regulations that we have in bylaws, the difficult job you have to do is to balance this very difficult problem of knowing that as we grow, some people will be advantaged, some people will be disadvantaged, some places will continue to be pristine, some places won't be. And I guess my only request to you as a council is to say, you know, that my vote and for this council and the people on it is a vote for stewardship of those plans. And the growth plans for Squamish, and knowing that you'll have to make some very difficult decisions about how to balance all the competing expectations. I want to remain living here. I want to remain living in the place that I love, and I know that you'll do this hard job of deciding what projects help Squamish to grow in the way that we have all as a society agreed for it to grow. The last thing I'd like to say is that, I know the proponent. I met him on the Mumquam. In my spare time, I put on wetsuits and dry suits and PFDs and jump in the river and learn how to do swiftwater rescue. The first thing I ever heard about Robin was that he was the first guy on site when, unfortunately, a young teenager died at the Mumquam Falls. He was the one who had to make the difficult decision to choose whether he was going to jump in and try to save 2 lives or not. He did jump in. He managed to, well, one kid managed to be saved, the other died. And, you know, I know that from the point of view of intent and the passion that goes with trying to protect the environment and people, I have also trust that the way he's going about his business is as he says it will be. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so there's no new hands. I know Ms. Clark still wants to speak again. So I'll come back to you, Ms. Clark, if you'd like to finish your comments.
Thank you for giving me some extra time. I do appreciate it. So I think there's
Thanks
really...
for your patience.
Do I need to say my name again? Do I need to say... No? Are we good? Okay, perfect. So let's say this does get the go-ahead. It's a private investment. There have been a number of well-funded projects in the news of late, like the Albion Pools and Maple Ridge, where they've had over 50 million in funding available to build that facility, only to discover structural deficits that required a continuous amount of additional funds to be poured into that project. This Squamish Canyon Project appears to have secured funding via the EMD market, and the maximum that can be raised in any given year through this means is $500,000, based on fundraising restrictions on this type of investment. Given the money needed to get this far, how much is remaining for further work on the project? At this time, it appears from public records that there is insufficient funding for a project of this scope, let alone servicing the access roads and accounting for all the contingencies that need to be put in place going forwards. It does make me worry that, you know, if, let's just say zoning does get changed, a proponent is successful, what happens if the money runs out? Does he then sell that plot of land to somebody else who has more money to do something else with it, and we have less control over that? The fact that zoning is already changed, the land has been sold, what control do we have as a district to have any controls over what happens there? If this is not the case, then I think more details do need to be shared on how this is going to be funded going forward. So the last thing we want is for something of this scale to be started and not finished. Does it have that longevity of support? How much is it going to cost to actually access the site? What are the projections of income, profit, loss? What is the balance sheet that makes sure that this is a successful business? Because if it does get the go-ahead, and I'm hearing there is support for it, then we really have to make sure that we can effectively maintain it. And I'm not confident, based on public records and what we've been able to find, that that is the case. And I think finally, the one thing I would like to submit is a petition. Yesterday, we met as a community up in Ravens Plateau and up on Cherry Drive and around that area. And we put together a petition last night at 7 p.m. Between last night and 2:51 today, when I submitted my letter, there was there were 1,097 signatures with concerns against this proposal, and now we stand at 1,397 signatures from the community. Now, this was really done, as we discussed in our meeting, to allow people the opportunity who don't necessarily feel comfortable writing letters, don't feel comfortable coming to a place such as this, to really give them an opportunity to share their concerns. I haven't been able to download the data because you can't download it until 24 hours after it's started. So once I am able to download that, I will send to you to see the comments, to see the data, and to really see what...
Send it to staff, but not to
Oh, yeah,
us.
no, sorry, I'll send it to whoever I should send it to. I will send it to them to share that information. So really, I think, to just kind of echo what everybody else is saying here, we don't disagree with growth. We understand that it has to happen, but please, please take the time to truly understand all of the impacts here and make sure that the decision is made is a balanced, measured decision and considers all people that are going to be impacted by this, not only in the short term, but in the long term as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? There were a couple of questions that staff thought the proponent might be able to answer. One about security and one about logging rights if the project doesn't go ahead. And I'm wondering if the proponent would like to respond to those questions. No, you always have 5 minutes to speak, but you need to speak to what's in the bylaw. But if you would, if... You get 5 minutes at a time, and then I'm going to cut you off and ask other people if they want to speak. So you can save that. Council can ask their questions, but if you'd be happy to answer those two questions for us, that would be great.
For security?
You need to come to the podium. Thanks, Mr. Sherry. Yeah, I'm going to get to that one. Robin, you can do more. What's that? Use your 5 minutes.
Okay, so the two questions in question were again security.
What will the security be like, I think, after hours?
Yes, that's a great question. And obviously with what's happened recently with the gondola, there was some fear for us. For this project, I did a lot of research in Austria, a place that had a lot of experience with a project like this. So canyon walkways that cater to all different levels and abilities for the tourism demographic. And their security over there, European style, was pretty loose. So at night, it was left open, all the signs, and people could hop a fence and go in and that kind of thing. And that was theirs. That's not ours. We sat down with the gondola and saw what they were going to do and are doing in height of what happened. And full-time security on site during construction and after is part of what we're doing. And the same kind of camera work to be able to watch and notify if anyone's walking along those walkways during the evening and be notified to our security. So that's security, which is something we're constantly looking at and will be also revised as we go. because the safety of that area, my background is safety consulting, is obviously a huge concern. The design of the whole project and what we're doing is based around safety and avoiding the inevitable of what's going to happen in that area. So I hope that answers your question to this point.
Yeah. And the other question I think came from Councillor Pettengill about if this didn't go ahead with the logging rights, what would happen to those logging rights that you purchased?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So that's not a quick answer, and there's other questions on the logging beside the roads there as well. So I spent many years and over 5 years going through the legalities and researching and sitting down with the province on how this all works, because before I went through this process, I really wanted to know what would happen, how it would happen, what happens to future space around that area. Do we have the ability to protect and expand the green space if we are successful and can offer alternative financial initiatives to the green space around there? But to answer your question directly, yes. If the project doesn't go through, there will have to be some kind of repercussion of assets for myself that has put into this project. I have, full disclosure, sold everything to move this project forward. This town is not a cheap place to live. If it doesn't move forward, then there will be an ability to recap assets. Unfortunately, that is not the route in any way I want to go. It's the opposite of what I'm trying to do and have staked everything on. So yes, to answer your question, it would be put back into the cycle. When you apply for these things, when you work Crown land, you have to come to the Crown and show that you will supply a better social, economic, and environmental initiative or business that is currently used for that land. So the current use of land was logging. I had to come forth and put together a proposal to show that economically, socially, and environmentally, our project benefited the community more than the current use of that land. So that's how that went forward. In regards to your other logging questions and green space around that area, Councillor Pettengill, we have already engaged in talks, and I started this a long time ago, because the long-term initiative is to not only preserve this area, but somehow try and get a buffer around that area, because we are aware of the growth that will happen inevitably in that area. So we've sat down in early stages from Coast Aggregates to the Squamish forestry and logging industry, and asked that in the future, if we're successful, if we would be able to offer an alternative initiative to the trees in that space. And those ones are the ones, there's a section along the Power Springs Road that we've talked about. The logging that recently took place, unfortunately, all in marble bullet habitat on the east side of our tenure was clear cut. We asked for a small string of trees to be preserved along the power lines, which would have otherwise been gone. And hopefully in the future we can sit down, which we have with Coast Aggregates, and they have informed us that they will come to us, and if we can offer potentially a different initiative, then we'll have that conversation and see what we can do and come to, as opposed to what is zoned for or what it could become. So that's some of the stuff around the logging end of things. How am I doing for time?
That was answering questions time. So
Okay.
We probably have more questions for staff, but do you want another 5 minutes to address?
I'll probably
Council?
wait till the very end and make sure I hear everyone's concerns fully, and then if anyone's still left, I'll keep addressing. But in a short.
So you are going to take some time. Go.
Can I come back? Is that?
As many times as you want.
Right.
But you have
So
about
in
5
short,
minutes.
and I've heard a ton of concerns and growth, and that this was not a quick thought. This comes from an individual that has looked and foreseen and predicted and looked at other communities and what's happened, and researched around the world on what happens as you grow and as you live in a place that is pristine and people want to live.
Mr. Sherry, you got to address council.
Right, and we live between, as Mr. Henson mentioned, between two of the most beautiful, sought-after locations in the world, and quickly becoming one ourselves, and managing that growth. Well, that's part of that management is proactive, not reactive, and we're in a current state of reactiveness. We have a provincial and federal government that have a mandate to make Canada #1 in tourism in the world. We have a process that took me 6 years to even get to this point, with absolute uncertainty, with the unsurmountable amount of bureaucracy, notifications. There was notifications in the paper 5 years ago. For everyone that wasn't here or didn't read the paper that day, it was in there for 2 weeks. for people to ask and see what we, so this process is not short. It is not even close to what we need to be at to absorb the industry that we're proposing to bring and that we voted for to bring to our province and our country. And we are so far behind on that infrastructure. We are underfunded in our parks. And in this current location, if we feel that, how many people live in Vancouver?
Millions.
3 million. If we feel that 3 million people, once they find out a waterfall is a few kilometers off the highway, that your road is going to be quieter, and that if we're not there, that the dust is going to be eliminated, and that that place will be safe and serene for many years to come, I'm sorry to break it to you, but you're sorely mistaken. There are plenty of waterfalls on that river, and a lot of people know them, and they're a short hike away. When we have quick and easy access that every Vancouver person can drive to within a few minutes off the highway, and you don't have the infrastructure, the safety, the staff, the knowledge, the procedures in place to absorb that, well, watch what happens. We've seen what happens. Lynn Canyon is a great example. Lynn Canyon is a great example of a place that was a free-for-all, was allowed to just go, and what's happened now in an area, and I don't predict us being anything close to Lynn Canyon, but what's happened in an area, there is, as Michael mentioned, multiple accidents. It's a bit chaotic, and there's deaths. The North Vancouver Fire Department and the Parks Rangers went in there and started a program where they made presents, they put up signage, and they started to educate. And that dropped the incidents down by 70% with the times that were there. They also had to start putting up fencing because the entire duff of the forest was trampled down, and so that shows in itself what we could be facing, what procedures were put in place and what happened during those times. So I looked at that, I researched that, and like I said, I went around the world and researched certain projects and foresaw kind of what road we were about to head down, and create a project that not only is part of all of those solutions from your road issues. I can tell you right now, there's nobody from the district to the province that are going to eliminate dust, that are going to improve the road surface, are going to put up safety signage, are committing to trails in that area. Nobody. So that road itself has increased in traffic year after year. Yes, 100%. So without us, I'm not sure what's going to happen either. So like I said, everything I've done with this project, and I could go on for hours, because every aspect from our employment to our food, to our initiatives, to our roads, to our trails, it's all about a holistic circle of does one thing, if we do it, is it beneficial to the community? Is it beneficial to the environment? Is it beneficial to our employees? And that's how I've designed this project. I'm sorry, once again, if I haven't been able to relay that properly, but that is what I'm creating.
Thank you. A couple of questions from council, and then I'll come back to Hans. One of the questions we had was about the night sky and lighting from the project, and if staff can comment on that.
Certainly, I meant to address that the last time. So lighting, we do have regulation in our zoning bylaw that requires lighting to be dark sky friendly, and so that means the light doesn't shine upwards, it has to shine downwards. And then we also, lighting is typically something that we review in the form and character reviews. So it is, this project is only operational at this point, or as proposed from dawn till dusk. And so we are not expecting there to be, lit trails or any lighting. The only lighting that we're proposed to see is probably maintenance related. And that lighting will be required to be dark sky friendly, so all downlit. And they can even be monitored to be on sensors and stuff like that.
One of the other questions I had is how far our camping exclusion zone extends. Does it extend to this property?
Gary, would you know that question?
I don't recollect how far along I don't recollect how far along the Powerhouse Springs Road that goes, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's something we have looked at with other staff who are reviewing that regulation, but this time the answer I'd have to go back to find out the exact answer.
Okay. One of my other questions was, someone brought up there's other sensitive habitat in the area. And so through their management plan with the province, are there other permits that are required as they work through the provincial side of this? We don't control the road, it's Crown land. There's only, we get the zoning piece. So are there any other permits that are required from the province?
Certainly. So the environmental, currently we only have a preliminary site bioinventory, and that's the typical requirement at rezoning stage. But at development permit, which is, the next stage once this, if this proceeds through adoption, it would go to development permit, and that is a time where it triggers development permit review of the environment. And so we require full assessments of invasive species and more in-depth reviews of the environmental piece, as well as the federal and provincial approvals to have these trails within the SPIA area. So that is a next step of this. The environmental reviews, and Mike Nelson here is the report owner for the Cascade Environment, is here tonight and maybe could speak to a few things. Sorry to put you on the stand. If there is a little bit more on the report around the road, unfortunately our environmental specialist who was on this staff and reviewed this project thoroughly had a skiing accident this weekend and can't be here at the moment. So if you have anything to add to the road aspect, that is something that is outside of my expertise and my knowledge at this point.
Mayor and Council, my name is Mike Nelson. I'm with Cascade Environmental. I live at 2135 Ridgeway Crescent for the past 30-something years here in Squamish. I guess the first question was about the additional permitting from provincial federal jurisdictions. And yes, there will be a Provincial Water Sustainability Act approval required for this project for the trails within the riparian areas, and also an application to DFO, Fisheries and Oceans Canada. Both those applications are in right now, and we have received the reply back from Fisheries and Oceans Canada and got their approval for the project as proposed. The Water Sustainability Act, I say it's a year-plus process, and we're probably 8 months into it right now with them for that aspect of it. For the road itself, the access road, access roads are usually not, or they're not required to be assessed under the municipal legislation, unless there is an expansion of the road itself, i.e. Additional lane within that would impact the marble murrelet habitat there. And that's not the case for this project. There will be no additional clearing of the forest in that area for the access. So that area was not assessed per se.
Thank you. Council, other questions at this time? I'll just go down the table. Councilor Pettengill?
So there's some comments at the start about, I think it was because it was Crown land, we can't use some of our normal accountability mechanisms. And so I just want to understand, we've put in some requirements around 15% of the spaces have EV charges and a few other things, and that's tied to getting their zone 2 or their phase 2 permit. With other developments that we see, sometimes we put covenants on, and then I also see with this one, we've put requirements on the number of bus spaces in the actual bylaw. So I'm wondering what's driven our choice to tie it to the phasing as opposed to a covenant, as opposed to writing that sort of requirement in the bylaw.
So through you, Mayor, as we've discussed before, is this off? On? On? Okay, sorry. This is a unique application because it is on Crown land, and because it's on Crown land, we can't secure covenants with the province that way. And so typically how we do this is we do a big legal agreement that everything we discuss about with the project, we secure in a legal writing. It's an agreement between the applicant and the district, and then we can uphold that agreement. And unfortunately, with this case, we don't have that, so we've had to get creative. So we've put as much as we can legislatively into the zone. There are restrictions as to what we can secure and not secure within a zone, and we've done that. To speak to your example, for the 15%, I had an example here, sorry. These are the conditions with phase 2. We did write the electrical vehicle charging into phase 2. We did require different road upgrade pieces into this and trail upgrades into the zone. And but there are other pieces that will be more conditional on the province because it's not regulation. It's a little bit more, we weren't able to write it into a regulated form, and we couldn't do it under the parameters of what we can do legislatively with a zone. There is a very detailed, well, I think it's detailed, table at the back that I've put together to try to understand this because there are so many different layers. And so Appendix A, and I apologize, I didn't go through the amenity breakdown, but there is a large table that speaks to all the different amenities and how they're going to be secured. And it also goes into then now the engineering components and the environment components and when we're going to be securing it and how we're going to be securing it. Some of these will be secured only in the management plan, which, you know, it doesn't mean the district has full jurisdiction over it. However, we are ensuring that we're putting a clause within that provincial management plan to ensure that the applicant cannot go and change that plan without district approval. So it does allow for this assurance, at least, that the district and the province are going to work together to make sure that this is being all these agreements are being upheld. And I've spoken to the province about this, and this is something that they typically see with these Crown Land applications, and it's something their legal team is used to and that they've done before with other municipalities.
Thank you. Does that satisfy your question? Yeah. Councilor Herford?
Thank you. I'm going to circle back to I got a couple things here, but the light pollution piece, the power plant across the river from the proposed site, does someone know the current lighting conditions there? If they have a similar, I'd imagine they have a similar requirement for security being, you know, right in the neighborhood as far as what they're doing there. And I'm just trying to understand if we're roughly doubling what's there potentially, or if this is introducing new light that isn't completely new to the area.
My understanding is because it's a power plant, it's a provincial, like we never reviewed that application. It's all done through the province. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jonas or Gary, but we wouldn't be regulating the light on that area. So I'm not familiar with how it compares to this.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. And then in this piece here in the phasing agreement, the paving of the 3.5K Malcolm Forest Service Road and the 2K Powerhouse Springs Road shall be paved. To what standard is that, and does that include an active transportation or separated trail of some sort? And this is the 1.5 meter wide. Is that separate from the trail? I'm just trying to figure out sort of what that looks like.
Sure. So with and Devin, you can speak to this as well, but just to the regulation side of things, the intention here is that we were trying to put something into regulation, and we're amending it at this time. So there was the intention was to have a map attached to it to show you this, but because it is coming in at third reading, it's an amendment to the bylaw. And then we didn't put this in, but we can put it into the management plan to further secure this. And to give a little bit more detail of what this regulation speaks to. But in itself, this will at least secure that the basic level is provided and that a 1.4 meter trail is provided. The intention here with this is that it's on it's connecting the Valley Cliff residents along the Powerhouse Springs Road with this particular one. And then to speak to anything improvements on the road, and if that's anything else is added to it, maybe I'll leave that to Devin, but my understanding is it would just be a pave for the current width of what this project is, and it would have to be paved to safety standards that the that the province would set out. The ministry is overseeing this, so they have certain standards that they would require. And so it'll all have to be built to those standards. Anything more to add?
No.
Okay.
One more, I guess. The idea of a mid-project sort of failure and what our exposure is as a district under that scenario, and how does that factor into this? And I'm unsure the weight to give the financial viability of a project at this point. I'm wondering what our exposure is there, and if anyone can. I don't know who wants to take that one.
Mr. Villeneuve?
I can try and answer it. So we're not as concerned with the failure scenario on this project because it's not like a whole lot of infrastructure is going in one area. There will be more infrastructure going in with phase 2, and there's a certain amount of requirements for that. But the province at the end of the day is the landowner, and so they would normally require, a return to original condition type of clause in the management agreement at the end of the tenure, whenever that happens.
One more.
Okay.
For now, anyways.
Hey, we could be here all day.
Yeah. The additional road treatments, how is that secured, and how frequent would that be? How frequently would that be applied? I know that it's more. I'm assuming that more than once a year is more frequent than it is now. But that bit I felt was a little vague. And is it? How do we?
Okay, so the initial upgrade of the road would be captured under the provincial license. Subsequent upgrades or subsequent dust suppression would be kind of an as and when, which would be enforced under the road use permit. So the applicant will have a road use permit through the ministry, and then if the road is not performing to the level that the ministry feels it needs to perform, they are the ones who will be required to enforce the requirements for dust suppression. And this would not necessarily just be handed down to the applicant. This would be handed down to essentially all the users of the road through what is called the primary user. So the one who has kind of the main responsibility. That primary user, whether it's the applicant or whether it's some other user, is then required to ensure that happens, and they will work with the other users of the road that they have agreements with to get the work done. So I don't know, hopefully that kind of lays the framework out of how that would happen.
I just want to validate that it is a little vague, and because it's really reflective of the treatment that's needed. So if we have a really hot, dry summer, we may need multiple more, and it's really going to be a reflection of what's the need, and not this is the amount that you have to do every single year. So as Devin was speaking to, that management is done by the province, and it's done by that primary user. And I think he's spoken to this before, but dust will create a safety hazard for the users of the Squamish Canyon Project, and therefore it's in the best interest for this applicant as well to ensure that he has a safe space for the visitors to come in. So that's another added piece to why he would want to continue to do that as much as possible.
Thank you.
Last questions? Do you have any? Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. And thanks to staff for pointing to Appendix A. I think that's a valuable piece of this package. I just want to clarify, because as I read it, to me it reads, if this proponent was not able to make the project happen, it would be fairly difficult for a new proponent to come in and substantially change the scope of the project. And I just want to validate that is correct.
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor? Okay, so Council, yes, I want you to ask your final question, because once I go to the audience, if there's no final speakers, I want to do the say 3 times. So go.
So 2-1 for staff. I wonder how we arrived in the parking mix with 15% of the spaces with EV charges and 6 bus spaces. Why we arrived at that mix. especially in the context of our climate emergency and so on.
Through you, Mayor, I believe the intention here was that to make this project viable in the initial stages, vehicle traffic is required. There's really no other option for the proponent as much as he's explored and looked at. It's just the reality of the climate we're in currently. However, there is definitely a vision in his plan to support more bus travel, which is going to require a paved road most likely. So those two are going to come hand in hand. And the more that they can do that, the idea is that that would be the vision moving forward. We did want to secure something so that it wasn't just the proponent will do this, We did want to ensure that there is space for these things and that that's considered. So that's why we put it into the zone and the regulation. It's not intended to be a maximum, it's just a minimum.
And then this question, it might be one for Mr. Sherry. Just wondering if we can get a bit of clarification on what exactly a B Corp is and where you are in the process of a B Corp, if you have that certification or if you're still in the application process. When we get,
Is that relevant to the zone?
it was brought up by some of the speakers, so that's why.
Would you like me to quickly touch a little more just on the EV as well, too? Sure.
If Councillor Pango is satisfied with the response he got from staff, I'd rather have you focus on his second question, which is about the B Corp.
Okay, because we do have some big initiatives in that end, and we've taken steps to make sure that we can fully EV that entire space by the requests we've done from BC Hydro for the last few years. Just FYI. And the rest of the percentiles were based off of actual stats, and then we went above that. But as far as the second question is the...
Where are you at in your B Corp application?
Right, so we're at the early stages. When I designed this project, I looked at the ethics and the culture and the direction I wanted this project to go, and I was trying to figure out how I could secure that. And part of that was to, first of all, hold off as long as possible before you brought on outside sources or investment that would otherwise compromise the direction of the project, and get through certain stages before you garnish the rest of the funds, which is another question I can address a bit later as well, too. As far as, sorry, say the question one more time. B Corp, right. So as far as B Corp, our project right now, as is really far along in B Corp, but it just comes down to the paperwork at this point and putting in the money to certify us as B Corp. If you take our project as a whole and everything we've done at this point, we're very, very high on a certification of B Corp. And it is in the best interest of the direction of the project that I'm doing, and that has been written into the general partnership at the legalities of the project. And we'll continue to do so as we move forward, and as we go through the certification and the funds to put into that. But as the project as it is right now and the direction we're taking, we would qualify for almost a full B Corp certification by design and procedure at this point. I hope that kind of answers it.
I think the other piece is just to clarify what exactly a B Corp is.
Oh, right, sorry, that's the best part. So B Corp is an entity that has gone global, and it allows companies to legally secure for future aspects or takeovers, or to let the public know as well that this is a company or a business that holds everything equally. And that is one of the biggest problems we've had, and one of the reasons we're in the state of emergency we are, is that on a corporation level, the margins and the company and the stockholders and the financiers, they have every legal right to maximize margins. And maximizing margins can come at any cost. And if you choose not to maximize those margins, then the general partnership or the CEO or the company as a whole can be sued. B Corp came into effect to allow companies a way to make sure that when they move forward with a decision that the environment the community, the social effect, their employees, and their beneficiaries were all considered equally. And if one wasn't really benefiting the other, or one was taking a serious hit, and in the certification of B Corp, a lot of those are geared towards your community and your environment and your employees, which they have found through studies and have shown over and over again that when those companies take those at the forefront of what they're doing, they're actually highly successful. So B Corp in itself is a circle of making sure that everything you do in a company considers your community, your environment, and your employees, and if they're all benefiting, then you can move forward with a decision.
Thank you. Okay, is there?
I had a follow-up.
Okay.
Well, a little earlier, I asked a question about the traffic percentage increase, and all the visitor projections sort of started from a baseline of 0, but we know that there's traffic already. So I wanted to understand that. Were you able to find that in?
Yeah, so the data that we have from the traffic impact assessment is based specifically on the peak hours for specific days. So it focuses on kind of the worst case scenario. So the numbers that I can give you are specific to the busiest Fridays typically of the year, the busiest hour of during Saturday, and busiest hour during Sunday. So the busiest hour during Friday, the increase to traffic is 100%. So the baseline traffic counts that they've done gave 34 vehicles accessing or using the Manclan Forest Service Road in a certain hour. The anticipated vehicle traffic for the gondola for that hour is 34 cars as well. So that's 100%. So Saturday, using the same calculation, is 70% increase. Does that make sense?
Did you say the word gondola?
Did I say gondola?
Yes.
Sorry, no, canyon. Sorry.
Thank you.
Anyways, yeah, sorry about that.
Ooh, I know it's getting late. I was like, did I hear that right?
Point of clarity. Canyon. Okay, so Friday is 100%. Saturday would be a 70% increase for that busiest hour. And on Sundays, during the busiest hour, it represents a 41% increase. And for numbers, for example, on Sunday, traffic count showed 123 trips on the FSR. And so that would be 51 additional vehicles added to that during that busiest hour on Sunday.
Okay. Thank you.
We also have another answer that Gary has looked into about the camping bylaw, and the camping bylaw does extend all the way to the end of the road.
So our bylaw officers do have the ability to move people along that are trying to camp on that road.
Yes.
All the way up to, okay, thank you. I saw another hand. Okay. Good, all right. Any other questions? All right, is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak? I see a hand here. We'll start with your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
My name is Spencer Fitchin. I live at 2298 Greenwood Way in the Highlands. Just a couple of comments and then one question. I think a project like this, if it's anything like the Sea to Sky gondola, will effectively privatize the area. With the gondola, which our organization, I'm a part of the Trials motorcycle community, we were well supported. They maintained access and did all of the good things up front. But when you start to have that number of people in that area, we actually had rocks thrown at one of our riders by other visitors to the area. So it's not necessarily the proponent who supported us in our continuing our activities in the area. They were great. But the people have a certain expectation of an experience. So this will effectively privatize that, and it concerns me not so much from the trials community perspective as it does from the dirt biking. That is one of the two most prominent access areas into the lava flow dirt bike riding area. And they come right down around that yellow gate right now, where their yellow gate is going to get moved to where the red gate is. I don't know if they're going to be able to get around that. And then down across the bridge and then up into, major dirt bike riding area on the lava flow. And I haven't heard that from the proponent or from the staff where that's been actually considered as, you know, one of the premier access routes for the dirt biking community. They will, if they don't have access there, you're going to push the dirt bikers up into the university. That's where we're, of course, promoting all of the mountain biking. Now, it's going to end up pushing problems away or moving things. The idea that it's going to stop camping and stop garbage and stop, you know, people hanging out. It's just going to move it. It's not going to solve it. You know, they'll move on to the Squamish, they'll move on to higher up the Mamquam, they'll move up the Mashter or the Ring. It will just shift the problem. It's not going to solve problems in that respect. That's my belief anyway. When we're looking at a project that the Capilano Suspension Bridge brings, what, 1.2 million people a year. Lynn Canyon, 400,000. This has the potential to be very big. I think, you know, it's understated when we're looking at 100 or 130,000 visitors. It could be very large. I've been to, not Lynn Canyon, I've been to Capilano, and I know the Mamquam quite well. And it would be a much nicer experience. The last comment would actually be a question to staff, possibly council. We are in a climate emergency. Have greenhouse gas emissions been at all considered as part of the impacts of a project of this size with the current method of getting people there is going to generate trips on the highway, trips on the Mamquam, even if people come up to do a twofer with the gondola and this, or two other things up in this area, it is going to generate extra traffic and lots of additional cars, lots of additional greenhouse gases, and we've made a commitment within the community to make some pretty dramatic reductions over the next 10 and 30 years. It seems to me that this kind of flies in the face of it, especially considering that the third runway at Heathrow was just, the proposal for that was taken to court because greenhouse gas emission targets were not considered as part of the proposal. So I think this is really important. And when we go forward with projects like this, we're saying we're going to bring all these visitors in. We haven't looked at electrified rail. We haven't looked at, they bus people to the Ashlew. Okay, that's many, many miles up, and they put people on buses to get them there. And we're talking about, oh, we don't have the infrastructure to get people busing 3 kilometers or 3.5 kilometers or whatever it is, up a road that is in way better shape. And they go up the Ashlew and they go rafting. And this happens all summer long. That was my question and comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Just hold on those. I'll see if there's any other speakers.
Hi there. My name is Mark Abema, 2006 Checkmas Way. I am in support of this project. I think they've done an amazing job with improving the existing road and the dust situation that we have going on there. I think with regards to this environmental crisis that we have going on in the planet right now, one of the best ways that we can educate and create awareness is by showing people beautiful places like this. And I think it's through people immersing themselves in these kind of beautiful environments that actually inspire people to create change. And we have projects that have happened, even Whistler Blackcomb, there's always opposition when Blackcomb first got built. And it's created so many special experiences for people up there. The same thing happened with the gondola. People were worried about having that kind of infrastructure up there, but it's by getting people up there that they're able to get a broader view of this beautiful area and planet that we live on. And I think in that state of mind, people can in turn look at what's going on regionally and globally and start creating bigger change. So I think it's really important for people to be able to come out and experience the beauty that we have around us. So I think, especially these days, we have so many children that live in a city and are so disconnected from nature, and I think being in a beautiful environment like this is what people need to see. And hopefully with that, we can start seeing greater change in our planet. So thank you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Other speakers? Yeah. Oh, there's a few of you. Yep, right here. And then I'll come to you at the back. Yep, come forward.
Hello, I'm Brianna Watkins. I live at 1533 Hunter Street in North Van. I grew up going to Whistler and Seattle and Victoria, and my family had a tour company taking students up to Shannon Falls and Brandon Y. And believe me, just growing up in the outdoors was so great and healthy and wonderful, and I'm just so proud to be from BC. And I've once that ended, our family sold the company and took off backpacking around the world for 4 years. I've been to 124 countries, and I only guarantee that family travel and tourism is growing and expanding, and I think it's really wise to be ahead of it and to do our best with keeping ourselves safe and animals healthy and the wildlife preserved with nature. And I'm really proud, and I'm pro project with this, because outdoor school and field trips to sites like what I'm hearing today, it was what made, I think, my life so great. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, gentleman at the back.
Hi again. Hi again. It doesn't get easier. You had a question about traffic.
Yeah. Could you state your name again? Just we've heard from a lot of people, and our minute taker would.
My apologies. Michael Heinrich, 2016 Balsam Way. Councilor, you had a question about traffic, current traffic on that Forest Service road. And I cannot attest to the exact numbers on a Friday. Clearly, it's busier than on a Monday. But one thing I can attest to is the number of logging trucks that I see going up and down, because they are quite noticeable. And recently I made a point of counting how many logging trucks go up and down that road. And albeit it's not always on Friday or Saturday or Monday in the afternoon, but when they choose to come down, when they've accepted their loads or they're working actively, it's every 2 to 3 minutes. A logging truck fully loaded or a logging truck coming up empty will cross that bridge every 2 to 3 minutes. So take that for what it's worth, because I think that needs to be taken into consideration, because the alternative being that high traffic only happens in this particular time because it represents the grand scheme of things. Yes, that's valid, but the major issue, as far as I'm concerned, with that Forest Service road is the impact that exponential vehicular traffic will have on those logging trucks being able to operate safely. We're dealing with a grade operation, so it's a downward slope. Trucks are traveling at either 50 or 80 kilometers an hour. There is a blind corner. There are pedestrians. It's a gravel road. In the end, if a truck has to swerve, brake, move quickly, the potential for that truck to lose its load is disastrous. So it needs to be taken into consideration, not just the amount of vehicles, but what types. Secondly, someone brought up the number for the Lynn Canyon. And again, there's been some comments as to whether or not it's a direct comparison, whether it be valid to compare those numbers or not. And granted, I hear that. But just so we're clear, when I initially stepped up, I spoke about 2015 numbers. And that's an important date, because that's right when this project started gaining traction. Ever since then, the District of North Vancouver has reported an increase of visitors exponentially, to the point now, as of 2019, 1 million. 1 million visitors in the canyon. 1.2 million is at Camp BYLAWS Suspension Bridge. 500,000 at Gondola. I'm not sure what the Shannon Falls is. Joffrey Lakes, Alice Lake, we heard Alice Lake is 500,000 as well. When we look at the numbers, the potential numbers for this project as being a mere 136,000, we really need to question where you guys get that number from. Because the reality is, you are so far from what the actual numbers are from comparative sites that I can't help but to question the validity of it. I just can't help, okay? So all the numbers for increased traffic, increased risk, accident risk, all that, they need to be questioned because they're based upon a number which we need to ask whether or not it's true or not. So, lastly, there was another comment or asking about what type of RCMP involvement. Again, we're talking about Lynn Canyon. RCMP involvement in 2015, there were 1,600 alcohol-related incidents. They have a bylaw program that was established in 1993 to help prevent injuries and deaths, et cetera, and that's a part-time program at the cost of about $100,000 per year. Whether or not the proponent has put into that budget to address that cost, I'm not sure. But a good thing if he does, because bylaw warnings, almost 2,000 bylaw warnings, and bylaw tickets in excess of 100. And this is all, again, 5 years ago at 500,000 people. So there are some other considerations to take, not just in safety, but in terms of regulation and security, which these numbers here suggest that we definitely need to be looking at as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff, can I get you to answer? I think we did talk about this earlier about the access for the lava flow for the dirt bikers and.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, the project in no way hinders any access to any users other than someone in a car who might accidentally drive down that road. So dirt bikes and mountain bikers and so on and so forth.
They can get around that new
Yep.
fence.
And I just want to add for clarity, I know we kind of briefed over the signage plan, but the signage is also intended to show that there is shared usership of this road. So taking an educational standpoint of saying there are dirt bikes on this road, there will be logging trucks on this road to ensure that is communicated to these visitors coming on.
And there was a question about greenhouse gas considerations.
Sure. So there was do you want to speak to the GHG?
Yeah, sure.
So Devin, so the project did look at, let me just clarify what the project looked at, yes. The applicant did submit a kind of a report that, or a document that reviews the greenhouse gas sequestration happening in this current forest that's being preserved. And so these are the numbers. And then he also provided the numbers for since the logging rights were removed. So that's the second one, and that's about 4 years. So Devin did some quick math, and this is totally just on Devin, so this is not.
Thanks.
Wow, we just expressed a lot of confidence in Devin.
He did do some quick math, and this was, and not just this evening, but we did talk about this and tried to compare these numbers for the public and for council. So he gave this a shot. So it's.
Yeah. So this is not an in-depth study, but just out of my own, somewhat my own interest too. Taking a look at just the road, so driving from the highway in to the site and back, which is approximately 10 kilometers, depending on the type of vehicle you drive or what average vehicle you're using. So I'll give a range. It represents roughly 85 to 175 metric tons. Sorry, that's what the MT is. Metric tons per year emissions for that road. Now, doesn't take into account obviously people who are driving up from Vancouver, let's say specifically for this project. As just a quick and dirty calculation, I assume 30% drive specifically from Vancouver, estimate 150K round trip. That's an additional 78 metric tons per year, just to give some perspective.
The other perspective to add to this is that, let's pull this slide up. Is it this one? I blanked. Oh, yeah, maybe it's not in here right now, or I can't find it, but the project is intended to achieve net zero. And that it will be written into the management plan. It's not, we're not requiring it part of the zone, but it is part of that management plan, so the future that the applicant is trying to move towards that. He is looking at doing hydroelectric, which will also help kind of offset these, the emissions from vehicles that are coming to the site. The last piece, could I add some clarity just around the tourism study and just these numbers? We did push back originally when we received that initial report, because we too thought these numbers were too low. So I just wanted to share that. And then we pushed back, and we also had this reviewed by our economic development team as well. And they were satisfied with these numbers once we came back and reviewed them a little bit more in depth, and they answered a number of questions for us. So the report that you see today was the pushback final report, or the outcome of that pushback, sorry. So we really required a lot more investigation into the estimates to how many people would be accessing the site, and we did question the comparisons, and we did get a lot of these reports are done by professionals who know the tourism industry, and yes, we're seeing a lot of increase in Squamish, but it is definitely not comparable to the Lower Mainland, and that's very clear for these professional. That's what they state in these reports, that we can't compare them to Lower Mainland.
Any other speakers this evening? Okay, I'll go to the back corner.
Hi there, my name is Nolan Rivers, 1828 Cedar Drive in Valleycliff. More of a question from my own perspective as a resident of Valleycliff and a mountain biker in the area. I typically access far side from the top of the dike trail on my bike, and there's been a lot of talk about vehicle traffic and trucks. What about bicycles accessing the trail network up there? Is there any plan for a segregated bike path with all this parking along the sides now? Because personally, that's how I will access it, and probably most of Valleycliff if something comes up there.
So through you, Mayor, the intention is that we did secure at least a 1.5 meter wide trail. The intention is that it's multi-use. It can be for pedestrians, dog walkers, bikes along the Powerhouse Spring Road that will connect the trail system from the Valleycliff to the trail system that is accessed just on the southeast of this project. So those four sides. So you can still ride on the road, I mean, if you so choose, but there is by phase 2, there will definitely be a designated trail for those users, because the expectation is that there's going to be more volume, and that we'll want to have a protected place for them.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for your question. Yes, sir.
My name's Martin Fichtel. I live at 1140 Laramie in Brackendale. I listened to the report, and it seems this project is exactly in line with what Squamish is looking for. The proponent was challenged in a lot of ways. He came up with professional studies, professional reports, not opinions, not his stance, but each point was addressed by the proponent. And it seems like he's answered a lot of questions. He's gone to great extent to make this project fit with Squamish. So I just want to say that I feel really positive about this, and it looks like there may be technical challenges to my friends who live in Valleycliff. I will acknowledge that, but there are also technical solutions to the problems.
Thank you. Any other speakers this evening? Yes, one there. Just your name and address, please.
Mayor and Council, my name is Charlie Harris, and I live at 40275 Eyre Drive. I moved to Squamish 3 years ago. Came here for all the things. I mountain bike, I rock climb, I kite, and I came here for the outdoors. And on a worldwide level, this is a destination for being outside and beautiful natural landscapes. And one thing I've noticed when I came here is that a lot of the people trying to get out into these landscapes, I'm kiting down at Nixon Beach, and you've got people, you've probably all been down to Nixon Beach, taking photos of the pylons coming out of the water, and down at the spit trying to see all the action. You've got people hiking the Chief in high heels and handbags, and what I see is that there's a whole bunch of people, the majority of the people travelling up to Whistler, 3 million a year, they're not the extreme outdoor athletes. A lot of them are just people who want to see these natural landscapes and get out amongst it. And to be honest, you know, the Chief is the one thing everyone tries to do, and that's like quite an extreme walk. So you think about all the lakes. I'm timing when I'm going to go for a swim up at Brome, Cat Lake, because the car parks are full, timing my walks around Alice Lake, Mirren Park. And so when I moved here, I came from a town called Queenstown, which is in New Zealand, and someone spoke about New Zealand earlier on. And I worked as a lawyer in the tourism sector for 10 years prior to moving here. And one thing that struck me is I felt that Squamish was Queenstown 20, 30 years ago. And we're going through this pinch point here at the moment. It's a boom town. You've got people moving here in droves. And what I loved about the Squamish Canyon Project is that I felt the proponent was one of those people in Queenstown 25 years ago that was looking at this in a proactive rather than a reactive way. And that's why I support this, because I think it's important that we have people in this community that, as the proponent talked tonight, literally putting everything into it to try and create something for this town. And in Queenstown, either the natural landscapes, and you know, I was a resident of Queenstown, so I understand how it's hard for the people who are directly affected by that road, but on a larger scale, you either get companies, or one, nothing happens and these natural landscapes are degraded, or two, you get companies such as the Squamish Canyon Project with a proponent such as Robin, who comes in, has foresight, and wants to create a project such as Squamish Canyon that not only considers what most companies consider as the number one stakeholder, the shareholders, but he also wants to consider the impact of his decisions on the employees, so making sure that they have a living wage. I've looked into this project. He's got ideas about providing employees with e-bikes, trail networks into the area. Also, he's considering the impact of his decisions on his suppliers. So, who's going to provide the food? Is it going to be local? He's also considering the impact of his decisions on the environment. We've heard a lot on that tonight, and also the community as well. And those that know the proponent, that really is his number one thing, was creating something for the community. And so just with my background in the tourism sector, one thing when I moved here, I thought, oh my goodness, there's just a lack of things to do for people who aren't extreme sports people. And this is a boom town and more people are going to come here. And so when I heard about the project, I thought I'm 100% behind that. Working for a lot of tourism clients back home, usually the number one is making money for the shareholders. And I know that that's not the case with this project. And I think that's really special that someone wants to provide a business like that in this town. So I'm in support.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Any questions, Council? Anything that you feel you haven't addressed yet this evening on your list? Okay. So I will, for the first time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission this evening? Mr. Sherry.
Once again, I put so much thought and time into this project that every time somebody talks about something, I've thought about that. And I've tried to figure out, are we creating something that's a solution to that? And yes, our long-term goals are to be carbon negative, and from the beginning to be as carbon neutral as humanly possible, and to be as sustainable as humanly possible, and also bestow that upon our visitors through education. A lot of this component is through passion of education from my background of guiding, from safety, from search and rescue to creating something that won't hinder our community. In fact, it will lessen the impact for our volunteer first responders. And so many points that one of the proponents makes about Lynn Canyon is exactly why we're doing this. Every point to that state is exactly why I've taken this stance to create something so it doesn't turn into that. When we talk about parkings, roads, visitor numbers, and some of that sustainability, a lot of it was touched base on, but our initiatives and our goals, which are there for everyone to read as well too, and I'll go through a couple of them. Increase alternative sustainable transportation to, I'm going to say SC, so I don't have to say it. SC will be partnering up with local transit like Squamish Connector, who we've been in talks with. West Coast Sightseeing, who is turning all of their buses over to electric transportation, and that's why we were looking at them. To decrease the traffic in the area, increase shuttles for our local visitor traffic. Squamish Canyon will also be looking at conducting local shuttles for families, visitors parked in and around Squamish, and recreationists to access the activities in the other area, whether it's for SC or not. The closest local bus runs to Cherry Lane in Valley Cliff neighborhood. The local Muni bus stops 2.2 kilometers away from the entrance of Squamish Canyon. Users will be able to use this bus. At that point, either take their bike off or walk with a path that we're planning on putting in much more before phase 2. It's actually in the stipulation. It's after a successful year of year 1, which if we see approximately 80,000 visitors, then that's a trigger for that. So a lot of these initiatives, I mean, we're a startup business. We want to be everything for everybody right away, but we can't do that. So we're setting triggers not only for ourselves that are getting put in for you, but these are things that we had promised to ourselves already. Not a lot of these things were asked of us. Biking and walking will be encouraged by SC and facilitated more and more as SC grows. SC will be doing this by increasing visual signage on trails and roads that connect walking and biking past SC from all directions, getting an interactive map and coordinating with mapping companies already in existence. SC will be working in conjunction with Squamish Trail Society, Mammoth River Action Society, SORCA, and DOS to increase and improve current green trail networks to increase enjoyment, usability, connectivity to the SC from all parts of Squamish. SC will also be looking at supplying its employees with e-bikes to decrease traffic to SC and around town, alleviating parking at SC and Squamish through this initiative, decreasing pollution, increase health, increase local employee interest to stay in Squamish and work, save on gas, car maintenance, cost, payments, and increase their time at home and helping local organizations. Also having EV charging capabilities on site for bikes as well as vehicles. Work with local bike rental companies to create connection for visitors to take their rental bikes to Squamish Canyon. Industrial safety and coexistence will be a priority of SC. Many logging companies have completed their harvest in and around our area off of the Power Springs Road and will not be harvesting again for a few decades. Squamish Logging is starting up one of their last areas soon and will be completed before SC starts construction and operation. Ongoing logging that will happen in the future will be notified to SC so proper safety procedures can be put in place for signage, notification on our website, and possible staff during these high traffic flows of log extraction, but does not happen on a regular basis. It happens during the extraction after the harvest has been done. Squamish Canyon parking and visitor initiatives. The capacity for parking can always be an issue these days. SC has secured enough parking for the park's needs and increased recreation in the future. However, we would like to keep our footprint small and work towards alternative transportation. Increase not increase preferences, not car increase. If car increase is part of the mandate due to increased popularity, then making our parking facilities EV friendly has always been part of the direction of SC. SC has made sure from day one that our hydro capabilities will be able to adapt to increasing EV traffic, and we see the SC as a great place to explore while your car is charging. One of the future initiatives is also to create our own energy through different means. The main source being microhydro, and having our facility, which requires minimal needs, our EVs and car charging stations off of the river through a microhydro unit. With the project also wanting to keep great experience for our visitors and community, limiting the number of people to the experience.
30 seconds, Mr. Sherry.
And the capabilities of the project is also one of our goals, having proper procedures in place important. During peak times where our visitors and peak visitors might be breached, having the procedures in place to turn visitors away or ask them to come another day will be done through placing employees at Highway 99 during our peak times, highway signage notifying visitors, showing updates on the website, recommending days and hours to visit balance numbers, offering discounts for arriving sustainable transportation, bus, walk, adapting to other SOPs for site, access, safety, and enjoyment, and also creating a carbon offsetting program for our visitors when they come. Okay.
Thank you. Are there any speakers? Any further speakers this evening? You want to speak again? All right, come to the podium. And before you speak, hold on a second. Council, motion to extend. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Herford.
Reluctantly.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
I've just got one more little thing. I mean, I'm a lawyer, so I love hearings.
There's always one in the crowd.
Yeah, but I'm very hungry. So I just wanted to make one more point. I don't know if it has been raised tonight, but I'm Indigenous in my country. I'm Māori. And whilst I'm not an Indigenous person of Canada, I'm Indigenous of the world. So one of the things that also attracted to me about this project was the proponents' intention to push the Indigenous stories of this area. And I have to say, I don't know if you know much about New Zealand, but we're very proud of our Indigenous history and our culture. And it's something that as a visitor, everyone learns about. And it's a really beautiful part of our country, and it's a very beautiful part of this area in particular, and this country's story too. And I loved that that was a big part of the educational and learning side of visitors to this canyon. And I think there's a real lack of that in the corridor, and I think it would be awesome if Squamish was sort of a leader in providing that part, or the stories of the Indigenous people at the canyon. And I know that that's a big part of the educational push of what the canyon's trying to do. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers this evening? So before I close the public hearing, I'm going to call 3 times for any further speakers on any of the matters contained in the proposed bylaw. So for the first time, is there anyone else who wants to speak this evening? For a second time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? For a third and final time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? Council, are there any final questions? Mr. Sherry?
Sorry. You're close.
I felt it. I felt it. We were this close.
Sorry, I just one more thing. I can appreciate the passion of the people in Valley Cliff, and especially Jerry Lane, where their houses are right there. I used to live on West Bay for 10 years, and I understand when more traffic and subdivisions are added to an area, and I can appreciate that. In regards to the petition that came out of there and was submitted to you, I double-checked with the environmental consulting team that we had and went through the entire list, and I don't believe there's one thing on there that actually holds much merit on a factual base. So we could go through it if you like. I think Mike's still here. Here he is. If you like, but it just, for something of that large to be submitted, it's very detrimental and frustrating when anyone can go on change.org and write whatever they want, and it be submitted in 1,000 to 1,300 people, and you can't comment, you can't stop it, you can't do anything. Whether it's facts-based, whether they've researched it, whether they surface researched it, thought it was the truth and put it out there, I have no say. So I think the consideration behind that and what's being submitted could quickly be looked at in depth to what's been shown here and what we have in our documentation, that there is no validity to that petition. So I just wanted to say that before it was submitted as well. So thanks.
Thank you. So before closing the public hearing, I'll call again 3 times for any further speakers on the matters contained in the bylaw. For the first time, is there anyone else who wants to speak this evening or make a submission? Yes.
Okay, look. We can talk smoke and mirrors all day long. The reality of the fact is that half the stuff that you talk about, I don't know if actually has any merit. Now, I'm not going to question your integrity, but the reality is...
I need you to address council.
Reality is, I don't think it's appropriate for us to consider this application because we're going to make a green roof, or we're going to have charging stations here, or we're going to provide some full-time jobs, maybe, if the season provides it. At the end of the day, these are decisions that you have to make. But for someone to simply say that there are 1,500 people in right now who collectively, in the last 22 hours, are opposed to this project, and just to discount that because they don't feel like they have a right to an opinion, I think that's unfair. It's unfair to leave on that note. So for him to say that, or for the proponent to say that, I will say there are other things to consider which we don't know the root and the answers to those questions either. At the end of the day, it's potentially, everything needs to be taken into consideration. So I ask you not to discount what your constituents have voted for, or what are saying. What they're saying is they don't want this project. What they're saying is they moved to Squamish not to be next to a tourist attraction. That's what they're saying. For whatever reason, whether it's a road, whether there's this, there's that, they don't want hundreds of thousands of people next door and everything that'll come with that. So whether we argue about this and that is irrelevant. The numbers are there, and they're going to increase. They're increasing every minute.
Are there any further speakers? So before I close the public hearing, I will call 3 times. For the first time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission to the bylaw before us this evening? For a second time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? And for the third and final time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? Seeing no further speakers, please note, council members are not permitted to receive any further submissions or hear either a proponent or opponent to an application once the public hearing has been concluded. So this means we can't speak to you out in the community or receive emails from you or phone calls on this matter until a decision on the bylaw has been made. Any and all communication from this point must be channeled to staff. And since there were no further speakers, I now declare the hearing closed. I want to thank all the staff who have supported this hearing this evening. And I want to thank all of you for coming and expressing your voices to council. It's so important to our democratic process. So thank you for being here. Council does have the option to entertain third reading on the agenda. I will point out that we are now into our 13th hour of meetings today. We have received a lot of submissions today. We have had a lot of speakers this evening, and council may wish to digest what they've heard this evening before making a decision on third reading. And it can be brought back at the next regular business meeting. So certainly that is my preference, but I am one vote. So I will look to council. I'm not seeing anyone moving this motion forward at this point, so I think council is going to allow this information to sink in, and I'll just remind the public again that if you do have any further information, it must go through staff. We cannot speak to it or receive information on it. So I will now ask for a motion to terminate this meeting, moved by Councillor Stoner, by Councillor French. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone.